Chapter 507. It was still the Wu family's mansion, still the same living room, still sitting around the round table, but this time, Wu Yingxiong was sitting at the head of the table. Old Wu, what did you just say? Master Kong killed 11 immortals with one slash? He defeated the Bai family? After listening to Wu Yingxiong's narration, Hua Wanfang was horrified and couldn't believe it. By then, the news of the battle on Xianglu Peak had finally reached the ears of the two sects in the southwest. When Jiang Tian destroyed the Gu God sect and was about to attack the Bai family in Yanjin, Hua Wanfang, the Grand Magus, Yun Yan, and Qin Xinyu all chose to stay away from the Bai family. That was understandable. According to the comparison of power at that time, the Bai family was backed by the Mount Shu Sword sect and had 11 half-step immortal state warriors. According to the rumors, Jiang Tian had just entered the immortal state. Such provocation was tantamount to an ant trying to shake a tree. However, no one had expected that Jiang Tian would kill 11 immortals with one slash and drive the Bai family out of Wuxia. Why would I lie to you? Grandmaster Jiang had divided up the Bai family's wealth, and the amount of heavenly materials and earthly treasures was as vast as the sea. I can't even calculate the benefits. Wu Yingxiong took a sip of pu-er tea and said excitedly, "Did you know? Hu Qingtian, Zhao Yuankuan, and Wei Feilong have all reached the half-step immortal state level. If I follow Master Kong from now on, I will reach the half-step immortal state level or even the immortal state level." A trace of faintly discernible pride gradually climbed up the corners of his eyes and brows. He said smugly, "In Jinlin City I was the coffin carrier. The 16 coffin bearers were all at the Grandmaster level. This represents the status of Wuxia in the Heavenly Alliance." Oh my god. Annihilating the Bai clan? Did this mean that the Jiang clan would become a martial arts clan in the future? Alas, in the end I was wrong. Hua Wanfang's heart was shaken, and she was also filled with deep regret. If he had more confidence in Master Jiang at that time, he could have become a member of the Heavenly Alliance and received great benefits. Mom, I told you I wanted to follow Master Kong. But you treated me like a child. You didn't listen to me and even scolded me. Soundless Shadow was so angry that he stomped his feet and almost cried. I really wanted to follow Master Kong, but my mother was holding me back. What adjudicator family? Why is it so troublesome? Wu Yingxiong was like a fox exploiting the tiger's might. He said in a showy manner, Grandmaster Jiang is the biggest rich family, the biggest arbiter and the only arbiter. In the future you'll be a man of your word in Wuxia. That's true. He single-handedly slew 11 gods and destroyed the Bai clan. If that's not an arbiter, then what is? When everyone heard this, they all nodded in agreement. The great sorcerer sighed as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. He sighed deeply and said, "Alas, we have underestimated him after all. We have missed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This Grandmaster Jiang Tsk is simply the most talented and most powerful cultivator in the past 1,000 years." Yun Yan rolled his eyes and leaned over to Wu Yingxiong. "Brother Wu, now that you've become Master Kang's favorite, you have to give us a hand. Do you think it's possible for us to join the Heavenly Alliance?" "Yes." As soon as these words came out, all the pairs of eyes looked at Wu Yingxiong in unison, full of begging and pleading expressions. "Old Wu, your sister-in-law passed away many years ago and you didn't remarry. When your brother Ing passed away, he asked you to take care of me. You have to help me." Hua Wanfang walked behind him and massaged his shoulders and back with her tender hands. She leaned her full breasts on his back. "Well, I'm afraid it's a little difficult. Grandmaster Jiang's standards are very high." Wu Yingxiong was extremely pleased. The pride in his heart did not need to be mentioned. It turned out that he was able to suppress Qin Xinyu and Yun Yan in the southwest region. However, he had to rely on Hua Wanfang and the Great Witch. He didn't even dare to offend their nephews. But now look at how these people are bowing and groveling. Hua Wanfang is even throwing herself at me. She's quite big, soft and fragrant. It turns out that you still think of yourself as noble and virtuous, ignoring me. But now, arrogant my ass. You're not worthy of me. I'm a member of the Heavenly Alliance now. In the martial arts world of Wuxia, who could be more powerful than Master Kong? He's the arbiter of martial arts. At this moment he made up his mind. No matter what, even if he had to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a pot of boiling oil, he would follow Grandmaster Jiang to the end. In the meeting hall of Poyang Water Manor, Many senior members of Zhao Yunkuan's family were excited and happy as if they were celebrating the new year. Master Kong has become the arbiter of martial arts. Our Zhao family can definitely stand shoulder to shoulder with the big families in Yanjing. We don't have to pay tribute to them in the future. We've spent a lot of natural treasures before. Haha, a bunch of idiots. That's all you've got. Zhao Yunkuan held a blue and white porcelain teacup and fiddled with the tea leaves floating on the tea with the lid. He said proudly, "Do you still want to pay tribute? The 6 families in Yanjing want to pay tribute to me. It depends on my mood whether I accept it or not." That is it true? Zhao Hao was excited. Is our family so powerful now? Of course it's true. Your Uncle Hui, Uncle Wei and I are the first people to follow Master Kong. Zhao Yunkuan sipped his tea and said, "He's the core of the Heavenly Alliance. The 6 families want AO to join the Heavenly Alliance, and they need me to recommend him. Otherwise, why would Grandmaster Jiang take another look at them? If Master Kong is the arbiter of martial arts, then I'm the top 3 executors." This scene was still happening in the Hua family, Wei family, Shenong school and many other martial arts families and forces in Wuxia. Kong Teichu, the arbiter of martial arts in Wuxia. This new title was like a hurricane, and it quickly spread to all the martial arts families and forces in Wuxia. Those who heard it were all moved. Wuliang Mountain in Dianan. The lonely peak was like a sword that pierced the sky. It stood tall, surrounded by clouds and mist, and there were few people there. There were goshawks gliding and white cranes soaring in the sky. It was like a paradise on earth. In the depths of the mountains where the sea of clouds was surging, under the cover of a concealment array, there was a big house and palace with white walls and gray tiles. The rising eaves were surrounded by a circle of high walls, and the group of palaces formed the appearance of a village. At the entrance of the tall mountain, there was a 3-foot-high boulder, on which there were 2 big words, Dian Song. The handwriting was as red as blood, with iron hooks and silver strokes, vigorous and powerful with extraordinary momentum. Inside the wall, on the bluestone-paved martial arts practice field, a group of disciples in Taoist robes were jumping up and down like agile monkeys, practicing sword techniques. When the sword was raised, it was like a dragon dancing, and the sword chi rushed to the sky. When the sword fell, the sword light flashed and the cold light flickered like the Milky Way falling. When the body moved, it was like a dragon soaring and a tiger leaping, majestic like mountains and rivers. When the body stopped, it was like a deep abyss, lofty like a mountain. From the 2 small swords embroidered on the chest of their Taoist robes, it could be seen that they were only 2-star outer core disciples in the sect. If there were martial artists in the secular world here, they would definitely exclaim that the Dian Song sect was so powerful. The dozens of outer core disciples on the martial arts practice field were almost all transcendent state cultivators, and their sword arts were first class. They were definitely not first-class sword art masters in the secular world. In fact, the Wuliang Dian Song sect was extremely powerful and was ranked as one of the 6 semi-hidden sects, second only to the 5 major sects of Kunlun, Mount Shu, Amei, Qingqing, Tianshan and Wudang. The strength of a single sect was enough to suppress the Bai family and the Huaxiaolong formation. As for the semi-hidden sects, most of them had hidden arrays and few people knew about them and rarely visited the secular world. However, they were not completely isolated from the secular world, and some people in the secular world could still find them. This name was worthy of the name. Whoosh. A middle-aged man in a white Taoist robe with 8 small swords embroidered on the chest flew across the sky and landed on the martial arts practice field. His expression was stern and solemn as he walked towards a large hall with hurried footsteps. Elder Liang. Many of the disciples present were stunned. They held their swords in their left hands, the tip of the swords facing inward. They clasped their fists and bowed deeply. Elder Liang's name was Liang Zichen, and he was the elder of Dian Song sect. He was responsible for teaching the disciples sword art and martial arts. He was at the immortal state phenomenal success. It was said that 10 years ago he had cut the Lansong River in half with a sword. 10 years ago he had also killed an 80-foot-long dragon in the Black Dragon Pool. He had exchanged a lot of elixirs and cultivation resources for the sect. Well, continue. Ignoring these disciples, Liang Zichen nodded slightly. His footsteps did not stop and instead he sped up. That's strange. Elder Liang has always been kind. Every time he sees us practicing he would give us a few pointers. Why is he so angry this time? The disciples continued to practice their swordsmanship while whispering to each other. Yes, something big must have happened. Elder Liang has been away for a month this time. He rarely leaves the sect for such a long time. Another disciple said. Could it be because of what happened on the peak of Mount Everest last time? He was killed by Kang Te. A disciple suddenly changed his expression and exclaimed. Chapter 508. Shut up. Don't you know that Elder Liang will fly into a rage when you mention this? Do you want to be punished by the sect rules? Another disciple reprimanded in a low voice, his face pale. Last time, Liang Zichen's eldest disciple Wang Haitao led more than 10 junior brothers and sisters to the peak of Mount Everest to look for the princess flower. Originally they were determined to get it, but they did not expect to return in failure. Moreover, 12 disciples were killed and 8 were seriously injured. Liang Zichen was furious and beat up anyone who mentioned it. Previously, a disciple was chatting when he asked when he would take revenge, but Liang Zichen broke his legs. So when this was mentioned, no one dared to say anything. The martial arts field returned to silence, and they continued to concentrate on practicing their swordsmanship. Walking into a dark and gloomy hall, Liang Zichen bowed deeply to a white-haired old man who was sitting cross-legged and said respectfully, "Zichen greets the sect leader." This old man's hair and beard were silver, but his face was ruddy without a single wrinkle like a newborn baby. "Elder Liang, please sit." The sect leader of Dian Song Zhou Xian slowly opened his eyes. His eyes actually shot out bolts of lightning, making the void crackle. Electricity from the eyes interfering with reality. The sect leader's cultivation seems to have improved a little. Liang Zichen's face lit up and he sat down on the futon. Sigh, this old man feels that there is still a long way to go before I reach the immortal man realm. Zhou Zixuan shook his head sadly and sighed. The peak of the immortal man realm can live for 60 years, but I am already 150 years old. If I can't break through to the immortal man realm, I'm afraid I won't live for more than 3 years. Senior brother, Grandmaster once wrote in the Xiaoshui Pavilion sword washing record of 60 years, the gate of immortality is closed, the path of immortality is cut off, and there are no more immortals in the world. Can be seen that becoming an immortal is an illusory thing. The peak of the immortal man realm is already the highest level that humans can reach. You have already reached the peak, why are you sad? Seeing this, Liang Zichen gently advised. But rumor has it that 800 years ago, 60 years after Grandmaster Xian reached the peak of the God realm, that is, at the age of 170 years old, he ascended in broad daylight from the bitter cold of the extreme north and became an immortal. Why is that? A trace of longing appeared in Zhou Zixuan's eyes. Without waiting for Liang Zichen's reply, he sighed with emotion. Senshin, immortality, immortality, immortality. Roaming the North Sea in the morning, covering the Kangwu tree in the night, the green snake in the sleeve is bold and bold. Entering Yuyang 3 times and not knowing anyone, flying across Dongting Lake with a clear voice. Being so free and unfettered, traversing the heavens and earth, possessing boundless strength, how much people yearn for this awe. After he finished speaking, his eyes were lifeless and he sat there like a piece of dead wood. Looking at the falling leaves outside the window and the churning sea of clouds that changed in an instant, he smiled bitterly. Look at the leaves of this loquat tree. When the wind blows, they fall like rain and are trampled into dust by us. The leaf's lifespan was only a few months. I'm afraid it's looking at us like we're gods. Yeah, maybe the immortals look at us like these leaves and branches. Liang Zichen also showed a trace of sadness. Zhou Zixuan couldn't help but sigh with emotion. As the saying goes, mushrooms in the morning don't know the end of the month and crickets don't know the spring and autumn. Chu Jinan has a netherworld spirit cultivator. 500 years old is spring and 500 years old is autumn. Those who have a large spring in the world regard 8,000 years old as spring and 8,000 years old as autumn. And Pengzu has long been heard of. Compared to them, we are nothing. Don't you feel sad? Senior brother, you're right. Liang Zichen's face became serious and he bowed deeply. Zhou Zixuan sat there motionlessly and was silent for a long time. Then he pulled himself out of the sadness and smiled. Junior brother Liang, you wouldn't easily disturb my cultivation. Could it be that you've come here for some important matter? Senior brother, do you still remember the elite inner disciple Wang Haitao and a dozen other disciples who were killed on the peak of Mount Everest? Liang Zichen's eyes became cold and asked. Oh, I remember that kid was very diligent, but his talent was a bit lacking. Zhou Xian nodded but didn't say anything else. The murderer is called Kong Teichu. I've already investigated all his information. He's an expert in the secular world. Someone from the secular world. Zhou Xian's face changed slightly and sighed. It's been a long time since there was an expert in the secular world. I met Bai Tianlei and Hao Hongmei in the Republic of China, and Yi Tianren and other experts. They were all very talented. However, their desire for fame and fortune was too heavy. They couldn't bear the loneliness of cultivation and were all delayed by the trivial matters of the secular world. A deep regret appeared on his face. He shook his head and sighed. Especially the Bai couple. Their hearts are burning in their old age and they don't forget honor and disgrace. Liang Zichen said anxiously, Sect Master, we have to take revenge for this blood feud. Otherwise, how can our Dian Song stand among the semi-hidden sects? We'll be laughed at by the world. Junior brother Liang, if you don't forget honor and disgrace, I'm afraid you'll lose your mind if you're tied down by the secular world. Zhou Zixuan said earnestly. Yes, senior brother. Zichen will follow master's instructions. Liang Zichen's face turned slightly serious. He bowed his head and admitted his mistake. Then he said slowly, that Kong Teichu killed 11 deities in a row on Xianglu Peak. He has become the #1 martial artist in the secular world and is known as the martial arts arbiter. Killed 11 deities in a row? Does that include Bai Tianlei and his wife and the 9 half-step immortal state warriors of Shu Mountain? Zhou Zixuan's face finally changed. He frowned and said in a deep voice, that should be the peak of the immortal state. But how is that possible? People in the secular world are shameless, chasing after fame and fortune. Their minds are messy and their minds are not firm. Their mental strength alone will become a huge shackle. I heard that this person is only in his 20s. Liang Zichen's face was strange and his voice was hoarse and dry. Peak of the immortal state in his 20s. How is that possible? Zhou Zixuan's face changed drastically. He frowned and thought deeply. Then his pupils suddenly shrank and his face was full of excitement and ecstasy. Could it be that he's from that place? Could it be that the immortal gate has opened again? Senior brother, I also think so. Otherwise, why would I disturb your cultivation for such a trivial matter? If this man is really from that place, why are we looking for the incomplete map? Just let him lead the way. Zhou Zixuan rumbled. He stood up, and a monstrous pressure instantly enveloped the entire Wuliang mountain. He said with great power, Elder Liang, summon all the elders and masters above the immortal state for a meeting. The old man wants to meet this Kong Teichu in person. Diansong sect leader who had been in seclusion for 58 years, was going to come out. For a moment, the entire Diansong sect was alarmed. And the 3 words Kong Teichu entered the sight of many hidden sects for the first time. At this time, Jiang Tian had already arrived at Yuhua Villa with Jiang Wan'er on his back, surrounded by Zhao Xueqing, Huang Linger and other girls. It was already late winter and the new year was approaching. Heavy snow was falling from the lead gray sky, and the whole villa was wrapped in silver, like a jade palace in a fairyland. Master Kong, you're finally here. I was worried that you wouldn't come. Seeing Jiang Tian enter the door, Chen Zifan, like a loyal dog, came to greet him and said happily, Don't let anyone in. I want to cultivate in seclusion. Jiang Tian's words almost made Chen Zifan choke to death. He had summoned the heads of the other 5 families and arranged a Manchuhan imperial banquet in Wangjiang restaurant. He also wanted to establish a relationship with Master Kong. After all, he had met Master Kong a few days ago at the funeral and Master Kong was in a rage, so it was not convenient for him to say a lot of things. But now their efforts were in vain. Oh my God. Cousin, this place is so beautiful, like a royal garden. Empress Dowager used to live here. Jiang Bangxia looked at it in amazement. Her beautiful eyes were wide open and her eyeballs almost fell to the ground. Originally, she thought that Jiang Tian got a villa from the Bai family which was worth tens of millions or a few hundred million at most. But this was not a villa, it was definitely a manor. With her good eyesight she could see that this was definitely a royal garden and it had a long history. Any object could be exchanged for a villa. Miss Jiang, you're right. This was the residence of the great ancestor. Chen Zifan introduced. To be honest, he was also very envious. It was said that when the Bai family bought this manor they spent tens of billions and this was still a bargain. But Master Kong took it as if he was taking something out of his pocket. Thinking that he only earned a few billion a year, he felt that he couldn't compare. Young Master Ziffin, please show me around. I want to choose a room. Xianxia said happily. Okay, Miss Zhang, please follow me. Qin Ziffin bent over and made a gesture of invitation, leading the way like a loyal servant. The spiritual qi here is so abundant. Zhao Xueqing took a deep breath and said with a look of intoxication. Jiangwan ran happily in the snow, and Xianxia and Yi Ziwei went to see the new house. This is the Dragon Marrow spiritual vein. This fragrant mountain is called the Mountain of Emperors. The spiritual qi here is enough for you and me to break through several times. Jiang Tian took Qing'er and Ling to the Shuangqing villa to see the two spiritual springs. Oh my god! Is this the spiritual vein? It's 100 times richer than the array of Mount Fu Long. Zhao Xueqing only felt refreshed. Her beautiful eyes were wide open and her face was full of shock. The Shuangqing spring was full of clouds and even filled with a strange luster. It was colorful like a faint rainbow. Yes, without this Dragon Marrow spiritual vein, how could the idiot couple of the Bai family break through to the peak of the immortal state? Jiang Tian exclaimed. This spiritual vein was considered an inferior grade spiritual vein even in the cultivation realm. However, it was relatively short, only a few hundred meters deep. However, just as Qing'er had said, the spirit qi it contained far exceeded the spirit qi gathered by the hidden Dragon Mountain formation. Then I'll go cultivate. This is so rare. Qing'er smiled and walked to the octagonal pavilion. She sat cross-legged and immersed herself in cultivation. I'll go cultivate with Sister Qing'er too. Huang Linger was also a little excited. Ling, don't be in a hurry to absorb the spiritual qi. What you need more now is to learn how to use your true essence. Jiang Tian pulled her to the front yard. Jiang Tian, I can't cultivate, right? I can feel the qi in my body but I can't break out of it. I can't fly in the sky like you and Sister Qing'er. Huang Linger said bitterly. No, there's no problem with your body. It's an extremely rare Yi-Wood spiritual body that has both combat and healing abilities. Jiang Tian smiled and said, you just need to use the right cultivation technique, and you can shine with the same combat power as me and Sister Qing'er. Really? Huang Linger's face was full of anticipation. Chapter 509. In fact, Huang Linger was just a spiritual body. In other words, she had the foundation for cultivation. Compared with Qing'er's immortal body and Jiang Tian's divine body, there was still a big gap. However, she could not match Jiang Tian's top-level cultivation method. Jiang Tian had already thought about the problem of what cultivation method she should cultivate. At this moment he made a prompt decision and said, I will teach you the Divine Withering Technique. Divine Withering Technique. This name is quite nice. Huang Linger's eyes had a trace of expectation. In these days, Qing'er had also roughly told her about Jiang Tian's ability and experience, especially the benefits of cultivation. Cultivators had unpredictable magic power and amazing martial arts. They could obtain worldly wealth and status, be respected by tens of thousands of people, and even transcend the mortal world and become immortals. Of course, this was very, very good. However, what Huang Linger cared about the most was that after she became a cultivator, she would be able to fight side by side with Jiang Tian and would no longer be a burden to him. Divine Withering Technique contains the truth of heaven and earth and integrates the way of life and death of all things in heaven and earth. From 1 withering and 1 flourishing, to 9 withering and 1 flourishing, there are a total of 9 cycles of life and death. Every time you comprehend a level, your strength will be stronger by 1 level. Jiang Tian said slightly and began to teach Ling the cultivation method. It could be said that this cultivation method was tailor-made for Ling. She had a Yi-Wood spiritual body and a natural ability to sense the growth and death of all things in heaven and earth. She could comprehensively and deeply understand this cultivation method, as if she had the help of God. The way of withering, you absorb the wood element aura of heaven and earth into your body. All things wither and endlessly fall. The way of raging, you spit out Yi-Wood vital essence and combine it with spells or magic treasures. You can nourish and kill. Life and death are controlled by your heart. Endless vital essence comes rolling in. This cultivation method was a combination of breathing, condensing vital essence and martial arts. Could be said that it was unfathomable. It had a very strong foundation and contained many possibilities and changes. It could allow Ling to cultivate for a lifetime. Jiang Tian's explanation was simple and easy to understand. Even though Huang Linger was just a beginner on the road of cultivation, she could quickly comprehend it. Back then in the starry sky, he had countless disciples and created countless immortal venerables. There were many who had excellent talent and comprehension, but there were also many who had poor aptitudes. Therefore he was the best at imparting cultivation techniques. These words were spoken with great eloquence, making Huang Linger feel as if she had been enlightened. In the next 2 days, Jiang Tian and Yi Ziwei went to Yanjing to handle some matters, such as the registration of Yawang Holdings, the location of the new office building, and the purchase and decoration of the new office building. On the other hand, Jiang Tian focused on guiding the cultivation of Qing'er and Ling'er. The third morning, Jiang Tian got up and went to the courtyard. He found that Huang Linger had already comprehended the cycle of life and death. Her body was full of Zhen Yuan and she was very beautiful. He was immediately delighted. He walked up slowly and took out a withered wooden stick from his storage ring. He smiled and said, "Linger, this is for you." This little wooden stick is so cute. It looks just like Harry Potter's magic wand." Huang Linger accepted the wooden stick with an elated expression and played with it lovingly. "Harry Potter's magic wand? Just think of it as a magic wand. It really has magic." Jiang Tian was slightly stunned. He looked at Huang Linger's innocent face and a gratified smile appeared on his face. This was actually Hao Hongmei's walking stick. It was a piece of divine wood of heavenly origin. It was a heavenly treasure and was priceless. However, it was too strange for Linger to hold a walking stick at such a young age. Therefore, Jiang Tian sacrificially refined it several times and added many arrays and runes. It became a slender wooden stick that was 1 foot long. It was quite beautiful and easy to hold. "What kind of magic does it have? Let me try." "Break." Huang Linger smiled mischievously and waved the walking stick. Only a hissing sound could be heard. There was a sharp sound. A jade-green vine broke through the air and smashed a rockery into smithereens, causing stone fragments to fly in all directions. But why did it explode? Huang Linger screamed in shock and subconsciously burrowed into Jiang Tian's arms. "Pa, it's okay. You'll get used to it. You just used the first style of wood thorn." Jiang Tian smiled and patted her soft shoulder. He was very satisfied with Huang Linger's performance. It could be said that with her current cultivation level, she could easily crush a martial arts grandmaster or a perfected cultivator at the peak of the transcendent state. She could even fight a half-step immortal state cultivator. "Oh my god, did I do that? I really know magic. No, it's more powerful than magic." Huang Linger couldn't believe it. She jumped and cheered in the snow as if she had won a grand prize of several $1 million. Jiang Tian smiled and encouraged her. "Don't be afraid. Try take root, grab the soil, twine, crazy growth, shade, flying flower, and result." Then under the guidance of Jiang Tian, Huang Linger's control of the wood true essence and the wood element between heaven and earth was getting better and better. Unknowingly it was already noon. At this time Jiang Tian's cell phone rang. He looked at it and found it was from his cousin Zhang Yilin. "This girl, she doesn't know that I'm in Yanjing. Did mom tell her?" Jiang Tian answered the phone. "Cousin, can you come to Yanjing?" Zhang Yilin's voice sounded like she was about to cry. He was very anxious. "What's wrong?" Jiang Tian was surprised. "Grandpa found out that I stole the Vitality Jade charm. I gave them the Jade Essence charm you gave me, but they didn't believe me. They want to punish me according to the family rules." At this time a majestic and angry voice came from the phone. "Zhang Yilin, come out now. Do you think you can hide from them? Break the door. Break the door." Then the phone was cut off amidst the crash and Zhang Yilin's screams and begging. The Zhang family is really stupid. Jiang Tian's face was filled with anger and he rushed out of the door. The family rules of the Zhang family were not a joke. It was very likely that Zhang Yilin would be beaten half to death. "Master Kong, where are you going? I'll send you there." When Qin Zifan came in, he saw Jiang Tian was about to kill someone. His aura was very violent and he was immediately shocked. Jiang Tian originally wanted to go there on his flying sword. However, he knew that Yanjing was an important place in the capital. The air traffic control was very strict. If he flew like this, it might cause chaos among the military and police. He would have to trouble Elder Chow later. Thinking of this, he turned around and said, Zifen, send me out. I need to take care of a few people. Okay. Qin Zifen was overjoyed. Finally, he could work for Master Kong again. Qin Zifen's car was a red Bugatti Veyron Hermes Special from 2009. It was priced at 43 million. Suddenly, it turned into a dazzling flame and headed towards the Zhang family. The Zhang family of Yanjin? Hearing that he was going to the Zhang family in Beijing, Qin Zifen curled his lips and said with righteous indignation, a secular family that is ranked in the top 10 in Beijing dares to provoke Master Jiang. You don't have to do it, I can destroy them with a phone call. Hee, that's my grandfather's family. Of course they dare to mess with me. Jiang Tian's eyes flashed with a hint of sharpness. He looked displeased. Other than his fourth uncle and Zhang Yilin, he did not have a good impression of his grandfather's family. In the eyes of the Zhang family, he was afraid that they had never seen him as their grandson. Oh, looks like Master Kong is not very satisfied with my grandfather's family. Qin Zifen immediately paid attention. However, Master Kong should be very nice to his cousin named Zhang Yilin. It only took an hour for the Bugatti Veyron to arrive at the Zhang family's gate. Jiang Tian scanned the area with his divine sense and saw Zhang Yilin kneeling in the courtyard of the Zhang family's ancestral hall. Chapter 510. In his 10,000 years of cultivation, Jiang Tian was extremely indifferent to family ties. After the soul formation stage, 3,000 years of spring, 3,000 years of autumn, and 10,000 years of spring could be considered a spring and autumn. Mortals would turn into a pile of yellow soil in 100 years. Compared to the technological culture on Earth, cultivation belonged to a completely different civilization. When Jiang Tian was roaming the universe, he once saw a god-level almighty using a magic tool called splashing ink. In just a few hours he was able to two-dimensionalize a star field, turning it into a corner of a bright star map on a magic tool. Strictly speaking, ordinary humans and cultivators belonged to different levels of life, such as blood relations. It was very common for cultivators to recultivate or reconstruct their bodies. What did blood relations matter? Therefore, since Jiang Tian's rebirth, he only cared about those who cared about him and whom he owed. Zhao Xueqing, Jiang Chongging, Jiang Zhixing, Zhang Wanqing, Huang Linger, and so on. In the Zhang family, only Zhang Yilin and his fourth uncle gave Jiang Tian a trace of familial ties. As for the others, in Jiang Tian's eyes, they were strangers. However, Jiang Tian knew that although his mother was dissatisfied with the Zhang family, she still cared about these relatives. As the saying goes, because you care, you care. There was no need to guess that his mother would absolutely not accept him killing a member of the Zhang family. Brother, take me away. Even if I have to eat rice and vegetables with you, I'll be happy. I don't want to stay in this terrible family anymore. After saying this, Zhang Yilin's tears rolled down. She tightly held onto Jiang Tian's hand and didn't let go. It was as if she was holding onto a life-saving straw. You, who are you? How dare you let this evil beast go? You even dared to injure the guards. Do you want to die? Just as Jiang Tian walked out of the ancestral hall, a middle-aged man who looked like a housekeeper heard the commotion and came over. He pulled out a pistol and pointed it at Jiang Tian. He angrily said, "Let him go. Otherwise I'll kill you." Jiang Tian cultivated non-stop. After condensing the gung metal divine body, he already had two appearances. The appearance he used in the secular world was also somewhat beautified and changed. Moreover, after he became a cultivator, his temperament was completely different. He was as handsome as a god. Therefore, Tian Jiaqing, the chief steward of the Zhang family, did not recognize Jiang Tian at all. "I'm Jiang Tian. Jin Ling's Jiang family, Zhang Wanqing's son. Put down the gun." Jiang Tian frowned and shouted, "Oh, it's you." Unexpectedly, when Tian Jiaqing heard this, he became even more disdainful. He said arrogantly, full of disdain, "What a good-for-nothing. You started stealing money from the Zhang family when you were 8 years old. You didn't expect that you would become worse now. So Zhang Yilin stole all the money for you to spend. It seems like this Vitality Jade Talisman was stolen by you as well. You guys really stole needles when you were young and stole gold when you grew up. As expected of the bastards raised by Zhang Wanqing who stole people." Someone, before he could finish, his voice stopped abruptly. Jiang Tian's finger beam had already missed. Bang. Tian Jiaqing was knocked over 10 meters away. He crashed into 2 guards who were rushing to the scene and rolled to the ground. His ribs were caved in and blood spurted out from his mouth. He passed out and no one knew if he was dead or alive. Steward Tian. Take him down. Don't let him get away. How dare he cause trouble in the Zhang family? Kill him. The guards who were rushing to the scene immediately pounced on Jiang Tian. Some of them swung their batons at him while others swung their swords at him. The Zhang family was one of the top 20 families in the mortal world. The old man of the Zhang family used to work in the Central Advisory Committee and was an assistant and advisor to the government council. He was on good terms with many leaders in Yuansun. Zhang Zhongguo was also one of the most powerful men in Yanjin. In the eyes of these guards, the Zhang family was a powerful family. Who would dare to mess with the Zhang family? In a blink of an eye, their faces were contorted in anger as they swung their weapons at Jiang Tian. Bang! 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 Jiang Tian's legs were as fast as lightning. In less than a minute all the guards were lying on the ground. Cousin, that's amazing. Is that the Foshan shadowless kick? Zhang Yilin clapped her hands and cheered. Her eyes were filled with excitement as she felt a sense of security. In fact, Jiang Tian had purposely suppressed his cultivation to the middle stage of the iron body stage. Otherwise, how could these people survive if he used his qi weapon? However, Jiang Tian's punches and kicks were clean and efficient. To Zhang Yilin it was even more pleasing to watch. He, martial artist? Iron body or internal force? At this moment a faint voice came from the door. Uncle Fu, who was wearing a white training suit, walked in energetically. Jiang Tian recognized Uncle Fu and knew that he had a high status in the Zhang family. Therefore he suppressed his anger and did not act rashly. He cupped his hands and said, Uncle Fu, I'm Jiang Tian from the Jiang family, Zhang Wanqing's son. Oh, so you're Wanqing's son. Uncle Fu looked at Jiang Tian carefully and was secretly amazed. The Jiang family was just an ordinary family. Moreover, Jiang Tian was a good-for-nothing. How could he learn martial arts? For a moment he was too lazy to think about it. He frowned and said, but you can't destroy the ancestral hall of the Zhang family, and you can't beat people up. That recuperation jade charm was indeed stolen by Zhang Yilin to save me. However, I'll take responsibility until the end. I've already asked her to give a recuperation jade essence charm to the Zhang family as compensation. Jiang Tian glanced at Zhang Yilin. Zhang Yilin quickly said, it's the jade essence charm I gave Grandpa. Jiang Tian suppressed his anger and said with a kind face, that jade essence charm is 10 times or 100 times better than ordinary jade essence charms. Now that Zhang Yilin has been punished, I'll take her away first. As for the rest, I'll talk to the Zhang family slowly. He walked away. Jiang Tian, stop right there. Uncle Fu stared at Jiang Tian with disdain and sneered, a jade essence charm is worth at least 100 million and it's priceless. How can a good-for-nothing like you find it? Even if you found it, would you be willing to give it to the Zhang family? You're spouting nonsense. Have you not recovered from your mental illness? If you don't believe me, you can find a Taoist or ethereal enlightenment expert to appraise it. However, you don't have the right to imprison Zhang Yilin. Jiang Tian didn't stop walking. He strode toward the main gate. Don't even think about leaving. Hand over the recuperation jade charm. Otherwise, I'll take your life. You still want to leave? You little bastard, I think you're a pig. You don't learn from your mistakes. Uncle Fu scolded. Seeing that Jiang Tian was ignoring him, he couldn't help but be furious. He actually attacked in an instant. He pulled out a 3-meter-long soft whip from his waist, and with a whoosh swept it towards Jiang Tian's neck. This attack was filled with the shadow of the whip and the wind howled. It was actually infused with abundant inner strength. If Jiang Tian was an ordinary person, there was no way he could resist this whip. He would either die or be crippled. Perhaps because of the influence of Zhang Jinghua and the others, Uncle Fu had never cared about Jiang Tian's life. Even if he couldn't kill him, he could still injure him. The Jiang family wouldn't dare to do anything to him. Old man, I've already said so much, but you still want to die. Looks like if I don't show you what I'm made of, you won't know that I'm a dye house owner. Jiang Tian raised his hand lightly and clamped the whip between 2 fingers. No one saw how Jiang Tian moved, but the entire whip made of tiger tendon, mulberry silk and soft gold suddenly exploded like a firecracker. The explosion started from the tip of the whip and spread all the way to the handle, turning everything into powder. The silk floated up like catkins. Uncle Fu's arm was numb from the shock, and blood flowed out from the web between his thumb and forefinger. He subconsciously took a step back. His face was pale and he broke out in a cold sweat. He looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. What is your cultivation level? Jiang Tian's cultivation level was so unfathomable that he couldn't guess Jiang Tian's true cultivation level. But he was sure that Jiang Tian's cultivation level was definitely above the transcendent state. Killing him was like playing a game. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but tremble all over. However, he couldn't understand. Jiang Tian was just an ordinary person who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Could even be said that his physical condition was extremely poor. He heard that later on. He even went crazy. How could he suddenly become a transcendent state master? How was this possible? Take my life. You're the old dog. You're just a dog guarding the house. Don't you know your identity? Jiang Tian stood with his hands behind his back and looked at Uncle Fu lazily. He said disdainfully, "Did you really want to kill me just now? I just wanted to injure you and cripple you. I don't dare to kill you. Let me go." Everyone saw with disbelief that the Zhang clan's Uncle Fu, who was filled with arrogance and whose words carried enormous weight, and could be called the second patriarch, had actually bent his knees and knelt on the ground, and he shamelessly kowtowed and begged for mercy to Jiang Tian. "Okay, I won't kill you. If you cripple me, I'll destroy your cultivation." Jiang Tian's finger light missed. Puff. Uncle Fu only saw a flash of golden light in front of his eyes, and a burst of blood burst out from his chest. The vital acupoints in his chest were instantly shattered and he couldn't dodge. Condensed chi into a weapon, condensed chi into a weapon. He's a grandmaster. Uncle Fu felt a chill in his heart and his whole body was cold. He couldn't help but tremble. Jiang Tian and Zhang Yilin had disappeared in front of him. "Master, you're hurt. Who did it? I'm going to kill him." A young man in his 20s ran up to him and shouted angrily. "Let's go. Take me away. We'll run as far away as we can. The Zhang family is doomed." With the help of his disciples, Uncle Fu endured the intense pain, his face full of fear, and hurriedly walked out of the mansion. A transcendent master. The Zhang family couldn't take it anymore. He had been serving the Zhang family for decades and had already repaid his debt. There was no need for him to work for them anymore. He sighed in his heart. It was better to bully an old man than a poor young man. Zhang Jinghua could only blame himself for being blind. He couldn't see that his grandson was actually a cultivation genius. He even wanted to rob the Jiang family of their assets. What? That bastard from the Jiang family? In the main hall, Zhang Jinghua heard the report from his subordinate and said angrily, "He was the one who instigated Zhang Yilin to steal the Vitality Jade charm. That scourge, that bastard. How many more years will he harm the Zhang family?" Chapter 511. Su Shulan was fiddling with the Buddha beads in front of her chest. She was chanting Amit Ba, but her mouth was full of disdain. Humph. Dragons give birth to dragons and phoenixes give birth to phoenixes. His father and mother are both good-for-nothings. How good can he be? She had a head full of silver hair and looked kind, but she was mean and vicious in her actions. She said fiercely, "If you ask me, we should just beat him to death or cripple him so that he won't cause any more trouble. If he hadn't stolen the Vitality Jade charm, it would have been easier for us to curry favor with Kong Techu. Uncle Fu and the guards have been there for so long, why haven't they taken him down yet? Tingji, go and have a look." Zhang Jinghua forced himself to calm down and said coldly, "Whether Jiang Tian stole the Vitality Jade charm or not, he should be crippled for kicking down the door of the ancestral hall." Yes, that's it. Not only would sacrificing this kind of trash have no effect on the Zhang family, but it would also form a powerful deterrent to the Jiang family in Jinling, forcing them to obediently hand over the money. It would also curry favor with the Song family in Yanjing, who had always been unhappy with the Jiang family. "Don't bother. I'm here." Suddenly, a faint voice came from the door. The Zhang family turned around and saw Jiang Tian holding Zhang Yilin's hand and walking in lazily. "Jiang Tian, when you see your elders, you don't even greet them as your grandparents? You really don't have the upbringing of a big family. You have life but no one teaches you." The third brother, Zhang Qingji, pointed at Jiang Tian and scolded. His voice was stern and angry. Humph, you're just like your mother. You have no respect for your elders, you forget your ancestors, and you're even worse than an animal. Kneel down and admit your mistake. The moment Zhang Tian entered, he had an arrogant appearance, not even looking at everyone properly, extremely arrogant. He was not the only one who was angry. Zhang Zhonghua, Zhang Qinggong, Zhang Danfeng, Zhang Yue and the other juniors all glared at Zhang Tian. Troublemaker. Troublemaker. Our family is so unfortunate. Zhang Jinghua's face was as gloomy as water. Su Shulan was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She almost crushed her prayer beads. On the other hand, Zhang Danfeng seemed to be more shrewd than in his previous life. His expression was very calm as he examined Zhang Tian. If I remember correctly, when I offended the Song family a few years ago, you announced that you were cutting ties with my mother, right? If you don't recognize us, why should I recognize you? Zhang Tian's face was calm as he said lazily. What did you say? You're actually so arrogant. Zhang Qingji's face stiffened. He was speechless and greatly surprised. In his mind, the Jiang clan should curry favor with the Zhang clan. After all, just like what Su Shulan and Zhang Danfeng had said, the Zhang family dominated Yanjing and had a lot of political resources, which was what the Jiang family lacked the most. In his opinion, not only was Zhang Tian ignorant and incompetent, he was also extremely cowardly and spineless. Previously, when the Zhang clan came to ask for help because they had offended the Song family, Zhang Tian cried his eyes out. It was hilarious. That was why he berated Zhang Tian so arrogantly and domineeringly, and even scolded Zhang Wanqing. Who would have thought that Zhang Tian would be so domineering and arrogant when he entered the house? He waved his hand and cut off the blood ties, making him unable to say what he wanted to say. That's why I'm pissed when you say that I'm uneducated and have no one to teach me. My mother is still alive and she has been teaching me. I'm not a beast. If you want to talk about beasts, then you are the real beasts. Zhang Tian's voice was cold. He moved his body and slapped Zhang Qingji's face. Swish. Zhang Qingji flew 8 meters away and smashed the coffee table into pieces before he fell to the ground. 2 of his teeth flew out and blood flowed out of his mouth. What? I'm your uncle. How dare you hit me like that? Preposterous, preposterous. Everyone exclaimed in shock and disbelief. Zhang Qingji covered his face and pointed at Zhang Tian and shouted. Ah, have you forgotten? Our families have already broken off ties. Now you remember that you are my uncle? Zhang Tian looked relaxed. He walked over as if he was taking a stroll in the park and stepped on Zhang Qingji's face. Zhang Qingji's face was in close contact with the floor. Madman. Evil. Hurry up and get Uncle Fu here. Beat this kid up and throw him out. At this time, not to mention the others, even the shrewd Zhang Jinghua could not sit still and shouted furiously. He was so angry that his body trembled like a sieve and he was about to faint. Zhang Tian was impulsive and easily angered. He had offended the Song family and made a grave mistake. A few years had passed since then. He did not expect that not only did he not restrain himself, but he had become even more unscrupulous. Not only did the kid disrespect his elders, he even dared to beat up his third brother. That was his uncle. This was simply disgraceful and arrogant to the extreme. He was crazy. Patriarch, this is bad. This is bad. More than 20 guards are down. Uncle Fu was injured by that guy and ran away with his disciples. A guard frantically ran in to report the news, but immediately after he saw the scene of Zhang Tian trampling on Zhang Qingji. He was stunned for a moment. He felt a chill run down his spine and the long saber in his hand clanged. It fell to the ground with a clang. Zhang Qingji. He was a well-known figure in Yanjin. He worked in the National Security Bureau and held a high position. Even the feudal officials had to avoid him. Other than Zhang Zhonghua, he had the highest status in their generation. However, that kid was stepping on him. Get out. Zhang Jinghua was slightly taken aback when he heard that. He waved his hand and dismissed the guard. Zhang Jinghua had been in politics for many years. Under his leadership, the Zhang family had been able to stand tall in Yanjin for decades. Moreover, his descendants had all developed their own careers. They had united around him and formed a sizable family. That fully showed that Zhang Jinghua was not a mediocre person. In fact, he was very shrewd and shrewd. In just a few seconds, he realized that Zhang Tian had undergone a huge change. He had become a martial artist and a powerhouse who could defeat Uncle Fu. He had become a martial artist. The Jiang family was willing to spend a lot of money. It made sense. Jiang Tian was ignorant and incompetent. He had only studied in a third-tier university. He could not run a business, so he could only walk the path of martial arts. Yes, he had figured out part of the truth. However, in the next moment his train of thought deviated. He did not connect Jiang Tian with powerhouses like Master Kong and Kong Teichu. After all, the two were too far apart. He only thought that the Jiang family had spent a lot of money to buy resources and hire famous teachers. They had forcefully turned Jiang Tian into a martial arts powerhouse. Zhang Jinghua, I did hit someone. How are you going to punish me? Jiang Tian stepped on him a few more times before lazily lifting his foot. Zhang Qingji was so angry that he fainted. What did you say? Before Zhang Jinghua could think of a way to deal with it, Jiang Tian suddenly stomped his foot on Zhang Jinghua's face. I'll show you. Crack. There was a hair-raising crisp sound. Zhang Qingji screamed. His leg bone was directly broken and it was a comminuted fracture. It seemed that he would either have to use crutches or be friends with wheelchairs for the rest of his life. Jiang Tian originally wanted to find Zhang Jinghua to explain. They knew the value of the Jade Essence Talisman. If he took Zhang Yilin and fourth uncle's family away, this matter would be over. In his opinion, even if fourth uncle's family was useless, he could afford to raise them. He had to raise them. He wanted to repay the kindness of fourth uncle's family. However, he did not expect to see Zhang Jinghua and his wife say that they wanted to cripple him on the way here. His anger immediately rose. These two old guys are quite ruthless. Fine, if you treat me as an enemy, then I'll treat you as an enemy. I'm not afraid of you. You. Zhang Jinghua pointed at Jiang Tian with one hand and covered his chest with the other. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling. His high blood pressure was almost acting up. Third brother. Su Shulan slapped her thigh. Snot and tears flowed down her face. She lamented the misfortune of raising a group of ingrates. Jiang Tian, you're too arrogant. Zhang Yue and the others' expressions were ugly. They were unable to restrain their anger, but they did not dare to say anything. As for Zhang Danfeng, he went to the side to call for help. Although they were angry, they knew that Jiang Tian was a martial artist. They could not deal with such a person. Maybe Jiang Tian would take care of them as well. Jiang Tian, stop it. Do you think you're so great just because you have a few tricks up your sleeves? I once participated in Zhan Long's special recruitment. I know some of Zhan Long's friends and I even went for special training. I know a lot of martial artists in Yanjin. As long as I'm willing to pay, I'll kill you. Only a young man in his 20s stepped out from the crowd, pointing at Jiang Tian and Zhang Yilin and yelling furiously. The young man was tall and had a crew cut. He wore a large gold chain around his neck. His face was full of lumps and he had an arrogant and ruthless temperament. Zhang Danfeng's temperament was completely different from the scholarly Zhang Yue. Jiang Tian knew this person. He was Zhang Qingji's son, Zhang Huchen. If he remembered correctly, he should have retired from the Eastern Swordsman Special Forces of the National Security Agency. He should be managing some of the Zhang family's entertainment businesses. He seemed to be the controller of the Crown Prince Hotel. Of course, the Eastern Swordsman Special Forces could not be compared to Zhan Long. After all, they were in the Special Forces. They were better at tracking and eavesdropping. Now, in order to make full use of the precious legacy left by Jiang Tian in Zhan Long, the Zhan Long Special Forces had become a melting pot for all major military regions, armed police forces and even national security agencies to sharpen their sharp soldiers. They opened the door and carried out special training wave after wave. Zhang Huchen was known as the local bully in the Zhang family. He relied on his little power to bully men and women and did all kinds of evil. When he was in high school, he had forced several female students in art schools, but his father used his power to settle it. After being grounded for a few months, he came out again and bullied people again. He became even worse. He had a bad reputation since he was young and had worked in a special department. Zhang Huchen was a big boss in both the underworld and the underworld in Yanjin. You called me Jiang Tian? You're giving me too much face. Didn't you always call me son of a bitch before? When Jiang Tian thought of his cousin, he was annoyed and his eyes suddenly turned cold. Chapter 5:12. Pop. With a thud, he lifted his foot and broke Zhang Qingji's other leg. The Zhang family had always hated Zhang Wanqing and Jiang Zhixing for marrying each other and ruining the family's reputation. When the two got married, they didn't send anyone to attend and even forbade Jiang Zhixing's family from visiting for a long time. It wasn't until the Spring Festival when Jiang Tian was 8 years old that the Zhang family finally showed mercy and allowed Jiang Zhixing's family to visit Yanjing. Perhaps because of the teachings of his parents, Zhang Huchen looked down on Jiang Tian and called him a country bumpkin and a son of a bitch. Jiang Tian was so angry that he fought with them. At that time, Zhang Huchen was already in his teens. He was tall and strong like a calf and was also a fan of school bullying. He knocked Jiang Tian to the ground in no time and beat Jiang Tian until he was covered in bruises. A group of children even undid their pants and peed on him. When Zhang Jinghua and his wife found out about it, they didn't care about the reason at all. Instead, they scolded Jiang Tian for apologizing to his cousins. Even after 10,000 years, Jiang Tian still remembered standing alone in the living room, covered in bruises and dirt, being scolded and mocked by his uncles and aunts. They called him a country bumpkin and uneducated. They said that Jiang Tian was just joking and that he would definitely be useless in the future. Afraid of their parents' authority, Jiang Tian and his wife didn't dare to say anything. In the end, Jiang Tian could only bow his head and apologize to Zhang Huchen. When Jiang Tian apologized, Zhang Huchen smugly whispered into Jiang Tian's ear, "Jiang Tian, you're a son of a bitch. So what if I hit you? Don't you still have to bow your head and apologize to me? Hee son of a bitch." After that, when Jiang Tian visited the Zhang family, Zhang Huchen always called Jiang Tian a son of a bitch behind his back. In fact, Zhang Huchen wasn't very smart and had the lowest status among the many children of the Zhang family. He couldn't be compared to Zhang Danfeng and Zhang Yue. Perhaps only by ruthlessly trampling on Jiang Tian, who was even more lowly in his eyes, could his abnormal vanity be satisfied. Even though 10,000 years had passed since then, Jiang Tian could still remember the unbridled mockery he had at that time. He could not forget that proud and arrogant smile on his face, and the malevolent and vicious look in his eyes when he waved his fists. "Fuck, are you done yet? Do you still want to kill people?" Seeing Jiang Tian attack again, Zhang Huchen's eyes turned cold. He quickly pulled out his gun and fired a shot at Jiang Tian. At this moment, everyone from the Zhang clan smiled proudly. "Ahu, you're not bad. You're fast enough with your spear and ruthless enough. It's good too. I'll just kill this little bastard and be done with it." Only Zhang Yilin was so scared that her face turned pale. She screamed and subconsciously covered her face so she missed the wonderful scene. However, the smiles of the Zhang family members immediately froze on their faces. They could no longer smile and were replaced by deep fear. Surprisingly, Jiang Tian did not fall. Instead, he held a bullet in his hand. Clang. With a sound, Jiang Tian threw the bullet on the ground. Everyone was shocked to find that the bullet had been deformed and even left lines on the skin. Hiss. Suddenly, there was a sound of cold air being sucked in. Zhang Jinghua's heart thumped. His heart fell into the abyss and his whole body emitted bursts of cold air. He knew that he was in big trouble today. This should be the legendary Wu Dao Grandmaster. No wonder Jiang Tian could beat Uncle Fu. "Jiang Tian, brother Tian, don't do it. Let's talk nicely." Zhang Huchen was so scared that his forehead was covered with cold sweat. His face was as pale as paper. His hand holding the pistol trembled violently. He did not know whether to shoot or not. "Talk nicely. Come here." Jiang Tian waved his hand and the pistol flew uncontrollably into Jiang Tian's hand. Zhang Huchen was sent flying. He fell on the ground with a ouch. When he looked up, he saw the black muzzle pointing at his head. Zhang Huchen was so scared that his whole body trembled. He raised his hand and said with tears in his eyes, "Brother Tian, let's talk nicely. Don't kill me. I have a few million in my account. Can't I give it all to you? I know all the art schools in Yanjin. Do you want girls? I'll give you a dozen tonight. You want to buy your life with a few million? Your life is so cheap. You should use your money to buy yourself a coffin. It seems like you don't know how much money the Jiang family has." Jiang Tian pointed the muzzle at his head and laughed. It seemed that Zhang Huchen was no different from his previous life. He was still a marginal member and did not even know how much money the Jiang family had. "Grandpa, can I call you Grandpa Tian? How about I call you Great-Grandpa? Don't kill me. I'll do whatever you want." Zhang Huchen was so scared that he became a pile of mud and begged. Zhang Jinghua was so angry that he almost vomited blood. If you called him that, wouldn't Jiang Tian be his father? "Kneel down and sing Conquer for me." Jiang Tian pulled over a chair and sat down, casually saying. Zhang Huqin came in front of Jiang Tian and knelt down properly. Then, under the gaze of many Zhang family members, he began to sing with a long face and trembling voice. Finally, you found a way to determine the winner. Come on, sing the climax. Jiang Tian poked his head impatiently with the gun. Zhang Huqin, the young master of the Zhang family, the new boss of the Crown Prince Hotel, licked his lips and skipped the beginning. He started to sing with his hoarse voice. I was conquered by you just like that. You cut off all my escape routes. My heart is firm, my decision is muddled. I was conquered by you just like that. I drank the poison you hid. My plot is over. My love and hate are buried in the ground. It didn't feel good to have a gun pointed at his head. It was even worse to have to sing. Who was Zhang Huqin? He was the young master of the Zhang family. He was responsible for some of the Zhang family's shady businesses and controlled at least 2 billion in assets. Because of the Zhang family's power, all the famous bosses in the Yanjing underworld had to give Zhang Huqin some face. In the Crown Prince Entertainment Hotel, he was the spiritual godfather. Dozens of senior executives and hundreds of young thugs would always unconsciously imitate Zhang Huqin's walking posture and smoking style. Hundreds of young ladies, peripheral girls, social butterflies, and even some second-tier and third-tier female stars would revere Zhang Huqin as if he was a god. In order to sleep with young Master Zhang, they were willing to put on an imperial harem drama and beat each other up. It was a great honor. It was as if they had been flipped. But such a notorious young master of the Yanjing underworld had his head pointed at by Jiang Tian and sang Conquer. Such lyrics were given a special meaning in such a special environment. To Jiang Tian, it was the pleasure of stepping on the unshakable enemy of his previous life like an ant. But to Zhang Huqin, it was a deep humiliation. But Zhang Huqin wasn't an idiot like Jiang Tian thought. He positioned himself as a formidable figure and understood such a cowardly action as a man who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. Han Exin could endure the humiliation of being under his crotch. The king of Yu, Go Jian, had once led Fu Chai's horse. This was called enduring hardships and hiding one's courage. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. A real man would live in humiliation for his ideals. It seemed that Dan Feng had already called for help and Jiang Tian would be finished soon. At the end of the song, Jiang Tian clapped his hands and praised, "You sang pretty well." As expected of someone who works in the entertainment industry. There's a sense of desolation in your hoarse voice and sadness in your heroic voice. You should be the legendary voice of alcohol and tobacco. In the entertainment industry, only Big Brother Li Zongxing, Big Sister Tianjin, Big Sister Yang Kuan, and a few others can control it. You might even be able to get a place in the Happy Boys. Come, let's sing for Sir Zhang. Except for Zhang Yilin, who clapped twice, the others didn't move. Everyone glared at Jiang Tian and wanted to skin Jiang Tian alive. Killing people was just a matter of nodding, but Jiang Tian's behavior was unscrupulous and humiliating. It was like rubbing Zhang Huqin's face on the ground. Moreover, it wasn't just insulting him, it was insulting the Zhang family as well. Zhang Jinghua had already swallowed a few pills. Otherwise, he would have had a heart attack and gone to the hospital. At this time, a person who looked like a servant hurriedly walked in. He whispered in Zhang Jinghua's ear, "Master Bai Lingfei is here. Do you want to let him in?" "Let him in. Let him in. Tell him that I've agreed to all the conditions," Zhang Jinghua said in a hurry. The servant turned and left. Zhang Jinghua was relieved. He suppressed his anger and snorted proudly, "Bastard. Zhang Yilin stole the family treasure. I don't have enough evidence, so I won't argue with you. What's wrong with me punishing Zhang Yilin according to the rules of our ancestors? But you attacked her repeatedly and even broke the door of the Zhang family's ancestral hall." He stared coldly at Jiang Tian and sneered, "You're right. I know you have some skills, but you can't afford to offend this man. He is Bai Lingfei from the Bai family of Yanjin, a transcendent master. I heard that he is at the peak of the transcendent state." "Really? Let him come and die." Jiang Tian didn't move and laughed arrogantly. Chapter 513. Your Zhang clan is truly ignorant. Do you know how popular the Bai clan's troops and consecrators are? Let me tell you, those secular families have offered hundreds of millions to hire them. At this moment, Zhang Zhongguo was nodding and bowing as he led the way. Bai Lingfei, who was dressed as a Taoist priest and wearing sunglasses, strutted into the Zhang family's house with an arrogant expression. Ever since the Bai family was destroyed, some members of the Bai family had left Wuxia out of fear of Jiang Tian's power. But there were also some old people who chose to stay in Wuxia. They were afraid of Jiang Tian's power, so they changed their names and became the Taoist priests of the secular families. After all, there were many of them and they had changed their names to keep a low profile. Master Kong couldn't keep an eye on them all the time. Bai Lingfei had contacted the Zhang family before and asked for 5% of the Zhang group's shares. He would only do it 3 times a year. He was an ambitious person who wanted to cultivate and improve his strength. At first, Zhang Jinghua didn't agree and said that a small temple couldn't accommodate a big bodhisattva. But now didn't he agree to all of it? Thinking of this, Bai Lingfei couldn't help but feel smug. Mr. Bai, you're right. It's a waste of your talent to invite you here as a Taoist priest. Zhang Zhonghua said with a fawning face. If it weren't for the fact that we already know each other, I wouldn't have bothered with your family at all. Bai Lingfei said arrogantly. Then he lowered his voice and warned with a face full of fear. But don't call me by my real name. Call me Taoist Lingfei. Otherwise, if Kong Teichu finds out, I'll die a horrible death. At that time he had seen Jiang Tian kill 11 gods with his own eyes. His strength was too terrifying. Later, the 6 major families even stood on Jiang Tian's side and helped to suppress the remaining members of the Bai family. Kong Teichu was really not to be offended. I know. Zhang Zhonghua nodded and said fawningly, but the Zhang family is in trouble. A junior is causing trouble in the Zhang family and defeated Uncle Fu. You have to help this time. Junior? I think he's at most a transcendent state cultivator. It's nothing. This old man will slap him to death for you. Bai Lingfei snorted disdainfully. As she spoke, she walked into the hall. Then he approached Jiang Tian. Are you that madman? I'm Bai Lingfei. No, I'm Taoist Lingfei. Hurry up and kneel down and beg for mercy. Jiang Tian was facing Zhang Jinghua with his back to the door. At first, Bai Lingfei could only see the back of Jiang Tian's figure. When she got closer, she could clearly see his face. Jiang. Bai Lingfei was scared out of his wits and his expression changed drastically. This person looked a lot like Kong Teichu. At this moment, Jiang Tian had the appearance of the mortal world, but he was still 90% similar to the gung metal divine body. You want to die? Jiang Tian's divine sense blasted out. Bai Lingfei instantly began to bleed profusely. Crack. It sounded like a toad lying on the ground. At this moment he no longer had any doubts. This was Master Kong. Only Master Kang's divine sense could be so powerful. I didn't know the adjudicator was here. I've offended you. I'll take my leave now. Don't kill me. Bai Lingfei kowtowed to Jiang Tian again and again. His head was bleeding. Frem. Yes. Hearing this, Bai Lingfei felt as if he had been pardoned. His body swayed and like a gust of wind he smashed through the window and shot out. He ran away. The smiles of the Zhang family members who were about to greet Bai Lingfei immediately froze on their faces. They were completely dumbfounded. What's going on? Why did Bai Lingfei kneel down as soon as he saw him? Why did he run away? What's an adjudicator? They looked at Jiang Tian in shock and disbelief. For the first time their anger turned into fear. Zhang Jinghua could no longer remain calm. It was as if he had met Jiang Tian for the first time. He looked at Jiang Tian with shock and confusion. Although he was shocked that Jiang Tian had become a martial arts master, he could still accept it. The poor studied while the rich practiced martial arts. As long as one had money, it was possible to send Jiang Tian to a famous master for a few years and use heavenly treasures to cultivate. But when Bai Lingfei saw Jiang Tian, he was so scared that he knelt down and kowtowed. Then he was so scared that he ran away like a stray dog. He felt a chill run down his spine and his clothes were soaked with cold sweat. His heart was gripped by fear and even beating was difficult. He felt suffocated. Zhang Jinghua, what other tricks do you have? Don't you want to cripple me? Hurry up, I'm waiting. Jiang Tian said coldly. Zhang Jinghua felt despair and even a little regret. What kind of demon did the Zhang family offend? He was a bit overwhelmed by Jiang Tian's power. He heaved a sigh and was about to lower his head and admit his mistake. But right at this moment, a guard dashed in and shouted excitedly, Patriarch, War Dragon's people are here. Good, 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 bring them here. Zhang Jinghua regained his confidence and looked at Zhang Zhonghua approvingly. Zhang Zhonghua felt his father's approval and was also proud. He sneered at Jiang Tian and said, "Little bastard, do you think that you can do whatever you want in Wuxia just because your family is rich? You are still far from it. Remember, this is not Jin City, not your family's territory. This is Yanjin." They were Zhanlong. Zhanlong's combat power had been rising and several of them had reached the transcendent state. They could be called grandmasters and were called small long formation. Besides, Zhanlong had a solid military background. So what if Jiang Tian was a martial arts master? He was nothing compared to Zhanlong, who was an elite in the military. After that, he no longer paid any attention to Jiang Tian. He pulled himself together and quickly walked over with a face full of joy. "Captain Long, I'm sorry for the tardiness. Sorry for the disrespect. Your presence brings light to our Zhang family's humble dwelling." The captain of Zhanlong was a senior colonel, which was equivalent to a major general. However, after 3 to 5 years of service, he would be promoted to major general. He might even surpass Zhang Zhonghua in the future. How could he be disrespectful? "Captain Long, congratulations on your promotion, congratulations on your promotion. I have prepared a table of good wine at the Crown Prince Hotel tonight. Let's celebrate." Zhang Huchen also quickly stepped forward to greet him. He nodded and bowed, bowing and scraping like a subordinate meeting his superior. His expression was full of flattery. "Secretary Zhang, where is he? Take me to him." Violent Dragon shouted loudly like a thunderclap. He quickly walked into the living room with the other war dragons and saw Jiang Tian looking at him with a faint smile. He was instantly stunned and tongue-tied. Dumbfounded, he said, "Jiang, that's him." Zhang Zhonghua pointed at Jiang Tian and shouted angrily, "He beat up my third brother. He committed a crime with a gun. My third brother used to be an important member of the Security Bureau. This man is a terrorist. We must bring him to justice." Jiang, Jiang, Jiang. Violent Dragon didn't expect to see Jiang Tian in Yanjin, and the terrorist that the Zhang family reported was Jiang Tian. He was so shocked that he couldn't bring himself to call him master. "Violent Dragon, you are the captain now. Do your best. It's just a family matter. It's not as serious as they said. You should leave now." Jiang Tian said lightly. Violent Dragon brought the Zhanlong to the Zhang family because of his duty, so Jiang Tian didn't need to be angry. "Oh, then we'll leave first? Don't you need help?" Violent Dragon said with a flattering smile. He originally looked rough and bold like a gorilla. When he smiled, his facial features were so close together that his eyes couldn't be seen. It was indescribably funny. But Violent Dragon's funny smile made the Zhang family feel a chill in their hearts. "What's there to help? I can't take care of them. Leave." Jiang Tian smiled. Violent Dragon was also a man with a sharp mind. "Then we'll leave first. If young Master Jiang has time, let's meet again." Violent Dragon nodded and turned around without hesitation. He waved his hand and walked out with a group of Zhanlong. Jiang Tian has told Tang Hongtu and Zhanlong more than once that he and Zhanlong's fate is over, and he has stepped down as Zhanlong's martial arts consultant, and he has nothing to do with the military, so don't call him chief consultant. So although he was full of reverence for Jiang Tian, he did not give a military salute and did not call him by this name. Moreover, he also saw that Jiang Tian didn't seem to want to expose the identity of Master Kong, so he didn't call him out on the spot. In fact, he almost cried out when he saw Jiang Tian. But Zhang Zhonghua's attitude towards Jiang Tian poured cold water on him and made him calm down reluctantly. Master Kong and the Zhang family broke out in conflict. They only need to throw out any of the identities of Yuan Zhanlong Martial Arts Chief Consultant, Jiangbei Master Kong, and Adjudicator Kong Teichu. Isn't that scaring the Zhang family to death? He didn't say it, obviously, because he didn't want to reveal his identity. Thinking of this, he sweated on his forehead and rejoiced in his heart. If his loud voice was broken, wouldn't he offend Master Kong? How could he survive in Zhanlong in the future? At this time, seeing the Zhang family's pale and bewildered look, he had a glimmer of understanding in his heart. It seems that Master Kong is Bai Long, pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. It's the same as the Qing dynasty's Emperor Kangxi's private tour. If I disturb his mood, I will definitely be beaten to death by Tang Hongtu. Zhang Huchen saw this and was stunned. Then he grabbed T-Rex's arm and said flatteringly, "Captain Long, this Jiang Tian is just a little rich second generation in Jinling. If you deal with him, isn't it like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife? We even drank together a few times. How about I prepare a drink for you?" When T-Rex heard this, he broke out in a cold sweat. Pa! A slap landed on Zhang Huchen's face. "Captain Long." Zhang Huchen was sent flying. He even lost 2 of his teeth. He covered his face with his hands and was horrified. "You want to die, don't you? Lousy didn't like you for a long time. Drinking wine, my style is too rigid. Will I accept your roping and corruption? Who the fuck knows you?" T-Rex pointed at Zhang Huchen and shouted angrily, but his eyes secretly glanced at Jiang Tian. He was so scared that his legs went soft. "Master Kong, I'm innocent. I've drunk wine, but I've never drunk wine. I've always been very strict with myself." Chapter 5:14. Captain Dragon. Zhang Zhongguo was shocked. He wanted to persuade him to stay, but he didn't think it would be useful. Violent Dragon ignored him. He walked out and scolded angrily. "It's just a small family dispute and you call it a terrorist attack. Do you have any political awareness? Can you afford to be charged with lying about military intelligence and wasting military resources? Don't you want to be an officer? Captain Dragon, it's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding." Zhang Zhongguo's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He felt like he had shot himself in the foot. Everyone in the Zhang family was shocked and broke out in cold sweat. They knew that even Zhan Long couldn't suppress Jiang Tian's identity. Zhang Jinghua's face was pale and his wrinkles became more obvious. He seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. His hands trembled slightly and he said, "Jiang Tian, I underestimated you. I'll let bygones be bygones. You can leave now." "Old Zhang, you finally have the patience to talk to me?" Jiang Tian sat calmly and took a cup of tea from Zhang Yilin. He took a sip and smiled. "I repeat, the Chalcedony talisman is 1,000 times better than your vitality talisman. Zhang Yilin has returned it to you. Mr. Jiang, since you have such great ability and connections, this old man also believes that the Chalcedony talisman should be real." Zhang Jinghua's words were polite, but there was a kind of coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away. "Well, since I've returned it 10 times, you're satisfied, but I'm not. Zhang Yilin can't suffer for nothing. Who hit her? Come out." Jiang Tian's cold eyes scanned the crowd. "Jiang Tian, don't kill me." Zhang Huchen's body trembled slightly. He walked out and begged pitifully. Another disciple hesitated for a moment and walked out with a sad face. "Good. You like to play with whips, right? I'll let you have your fun today. You two whip each other until I'm satisfied." Jiang Tian sipped his tea and didn't even bother to lift his eyelids. "Pa pa pa." At first there was a deathly silence, and then the entire hall began to resound with the crisp sound of a whip hitting a body. These whips didn't just land on Zhang Huchen's body, but also on the faces and hearts of the Zhang clan members. Their faces alternated between red and white. Humiliation and fear intertwined, but in the end there was more fear. Some people couldn't help but tremble and tremble. Some people were glad that they weren't Zhang Yilin's opponent. Otherwise they would be the ones being beaten up now. "Hit him harder, did you not eat lunch?" Jiang Tian slowly finished the cup of tea, but he still didn't stop. Instead he threw the teacup and shouted angrily. "It hurts so much." Roar. At this time, Zhang Huchen and that disciple's bodies were covered with whip marks and were already covered in blood. However, they still clenched their teeth and endured the pain as they whipped each other. Zhang Huchen's flesh was lacerated, and his entire body was dripping with blood. After being whipped a dozen more times, he couldn't bear it any longer. He threw himself in front of Jiang Tian and said with tears and snot streaming down his face, "Jiang Tian, spare my life. Yilin, help me say something. After all, I'm your cousin. How can you bear to do this?" Seeing this scene, Zhang Yilin proudly raised her chin and ignored him. She was indescribably happy and even had a feeling of exultation. In the past, Zhang Huchen bullied her and her father all day long. At this moment he was like an old dog lying in front of her, wagging his tail and begging for mercy. He probably wouldn't dare to bully her in the future. How can you bear to hit Zhang Yilin? It's good enough that I didn't make you take off your clothes and kneel in the snow." Jiang Tian sneered. Although Zhang Yilin hated Zhang Huchen, she thought that she might not be able to leave the Zhang clan, as Jiang Tian said, in the future. She pulled Zhang Tian's sleeve and said, "Brother, let's forget it. He also knows that he's wrong." Zhang Tian waved his hand, pulled Zhang Yilan up and walked out of the hall. A cold and murderous voice pierced through the wind and snow, carrying with it an eerie chill as it came from afar. "Remember, I don't recognize your Zhang clan, but I recognize Yilan. He will always be my cousin. If you dare to touch Zhang Yilan, I'll destroy your whole clan." Hearing this, Zhang Jinghua sat down on the ground, his white hair trembling along with his body, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. He sighed deeply and said, "Is the Zhang family going to be finished?" The ambulance had arrived long ago. But the medical staff only dared to come in now and rushed Zhang Qingji, Zhang Huchen and the other injured to the hospital. In the hall there was silence. Zhang Jinghua's face was as calm as water and he didn't speak for a long time. Zhang Zhonghua, who felt that he had lost face, slammed the table and shouted, "What the hell? He only knows a few tricks and he's just a boorish man. How dare he come to the Zhang clan and act so atrociously? He has no respect for his elders, is lawless and deranged. I really don't know how Wanqing taught him. Yes, he's too presumptuous." Zhang Qinggong also said angrily, "Does he really think that no one in Huaxia can control him? Don't forget there's still the martial arts ruling clan in Yanjing and Kong Teichu. Yes, he beat up third brother like that. He's too ruthless. We punished Zhang Yilan but he didn't do anything." First aunt, who had a bit of a noble aura, was even more furious. She fanned the flames and said, "This is clearly a slap to our old master's face. Our family is unfortunate. First there was Wanqing and now there's Jiang Tian, the ungrateful little bastard who beat up third brother and Huchen. My heart aches." Su Shulan also slapped her thigh, tears streaming down her face. Then she sniffed and said fiercely, "When we found out that little slut Wanqing was pregnant before marriage, we shouldn't have shown her any mercy. We should have tied her up, scraped this troublemaker and aborted her. Even if she was born, we shouldn't have raised her. We should have drowned her in a bucket of urine. Otherwise, how could there be such a disaster today?" When they accused Jiang Tian of being ruthless and disregarding his reputation, they completely forgot that they had kicked Jiang Tian's family out of the house. For more than 10 years, they didn't even acknowledge Zhang Wanqing, their daughter, and Jiang Tian, their grandson. They also forgot that when the Jiang family was besieged by the Nie family and the other two families in Jinling, they stood by and watched the show coldly. Fourth brother even wanted to help the Jiang family, but they punished him severely and removed him from all his positions. They also forgot that just a few hours ago they also ignored family ties and wanted to beat Zhang Yilan to death. They even ignored the order they gave to Jiang Tian to cripple Jiang Tian when he came to save her. Zhang Jinghua took a deep breath and looked at Zhang Danfeng. "Danfeng, the future of the Zhang family will be in your hands. What do you think of this matter? The Jiang family has been developing well these years. Jiang Tian has become a martial arts master and can suppress Bai Lingfei and Zhan Long. This is even more important." Zhang Danfeng frowned and thought for a while. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he said, "I think we should use the Jiang family first and weaken them second." "Use them? Weaken them? What do you mean?" Everyone was deep in thought and Zhang Yue asked curiously. "Use their wealth and resources to establish a relationship with Kong Teichu and the 6 major families in Yanjin. After that, we'll attack or even eliminate the Jiang family directly." After hearing Zhang Danfeng's words, everyone's eyes brightened and Zhang Yue felt a chill down her spine. What a ruthless method. But how will they be used? Zhang Qinggong asked. The generation of the Zhang family was the founding father of the country. He used to work in the Central Advisory Committee as an assistant of the central government. My father is still young and he has a chance to become the leader of the central government. How can the Jiang family compare to the Zhang family? Zhang Danfeng was like a wise Mr. Zhuge as he spoke tirelessly. "We'll lower our stance and invite Zhang Wanqing to Yanjin and introduce political resources to them. Then we'll use family ties to persuade them and they won't be able to refuse. We'll use the opportunity to make them pay and cut off their relationship with Kong Teichu and the 6 major families. Then we'll use the 6 major families to eliminate the Jiang family." "Yes, that makes sense." Everyone nodded. Jiang Tian is a martial artist, but how can he be a match for the 6 major families, especially Kong Teichu? Kong Teichu doesn't even need to do anything. We might not be able to invite him, but the 6 major families are enough to scare the Jiang family to death. Zhang Jinghua glanced at Zhang Qinggong and said, "Second brother, your intelligence work is not good. You didn't even know that Jiang Tian practiced martial arts. You made us suffer a great loss. Now that there's a conflict, it will be difficult to carry out the next step of our work." Zhang Qinggong blushed but couldn't refute. Zhang Danfeng said, "Grandpa, don't worry. In fact, this conflict can be resolved easily. We'll use fourth uncle." "Yes, it seems that we'll have to use fourth brother." Zhang Jinghua nodded and said, "Fourth brother and Wanqing have a good relationship with that little bastard Jiang Tian. If he takes action, it'll be twice the result with half the effort. However, after we weaken the Jiang family, we'll expel him from the family. Danfeng, after the meeting, go and do this immediately." "Yes." Zhang Danfeng agreed. Zhang Jinghua continued, "Also, Danfeng, you know Qin Zifan, Qin Zongheng and the other young masters. It seems that the spirit recuperation talisman is real. Think about it and see who is more suitable to give it to. Without their referrals, we wouldn't have been able to join Kong Teichu's circle." "Yes." Zhang Danfeng replied. Zhang Yue and the other disciples of the same generation looked at Zhang Danfeng with envy. The fact that the old man had given him a few tasks showed that he was approved of him. Before you become friends with the top families in Yanjin, you must not fall out with Jiang Tian. You have to be nicer in the future. Even if you have to squeeze out a smile. Zhang Jinghua glanced at the crowd and said in a deep voice. Chapter 5:15. Seeing that Jiang Tian had brought Zhang Yilan out, Qin Zifan quickly got out of the car and opened the door for them. "Master Kong, Ms. Zhang, please get in." Zhang Yilan was startled when she saw Qin Zifan. She exclaimed, Brother, why is he here? Are you a mother hen?" "Ah." Jiang Tian couldn't help but laugh. "What are you afraid of him for? Don't be fooled by his ferocious appearance. Right now he's my coachman and chauffeur." Zhang Yilan thought that Qin Zifan would be annoyed. This was the young master of the Qin family, Qin Zifan. No one dared to offend him. He was like a crab that could do whatever he wanted. In Beijing he could be said to be omnipotent. No, to be exact, he was the sky. Anyone who could recognize him would be omnipotent. Unexpectedly, Qin Zifan burst into tears. He was so touched that he looked like a child. He opened his mouth and sobbed, "I didn't expect that I could be Master Zhang's driver and groom. I always thought that I was a dog." "So, he's really a driver? Is it working?" Zhang Yilan was shocked. Her cousin was so powerful that he could even control Qin Zifan. Was he still human? Of course. You can try it if you don't believe me. Miss Zhang, if you have any orders, just say it." Qin Zifan patted his chest. He had to get on Zhang Yilan's good side. He wanted to hurt her in the past. If she said anything, he would lose his head. "Give me the car." Zhang Yilan looked at the red Hermes Bugatti Veyron and her eyes lit up with greed. She reached out and smiled stiffly. He loved cars. She got her driver's license after graduating from high school. She used to buy a Volkswagen Golf, but after her father was fired she couldn't afford it and sold it. She knew that this Hermes Bugatti Veyron was a top-notch luxury car. One tire cost 200,000 yuan. 4 tires could buy a BMW. The whole car was priced at 43 million yuan and was known as the most expensive sports car in history. Why was it so expensive? There was no need to mention the various technical parameters. They were all Bugatti Veyron's latest technology. Moreover, the interior and styling of the car were all provided by the renowned Hermes Group. The interior was completely handmade and the dashboard was wrapped in calf leather. Just the leather wrapping of the steering wheel took more than 10 hours. Therefore, only one car was produced every month and there were about 14 cars a year. It had just been released and there was probably only one car in the whole of Wuxia. Its appearance was also extremely beautiful. Half of it had the sharp posture of a super sports car, while the other half had the appearance of a round pebble on the beach. This sports car seemed to have appeared out of nowhere and descended from the sky. It was filled with a sci-fi vibe, but in fact it had a long history and was intriguing. The top-notch craftsmanship of Hermes and designer Gabriel Pezzini gave the old Bugatti sports car a brand new line and attitude. It was precisely because Zhang Yilan knew the preciousness and scarcity of this car that she thought Qin Zifan might not be willing to part with it, so her smile was a little unnatural. If he refused, then she would say that she was joking. Unexpectedly, the tears that Qin Zifen had just wiped away rolled down again. Zhang Yilin was shocked. Why are you crying? Stingy guy, if you don't want to part with it, then don't. I was just joking with you. Who would really want it? Oh no. Qin Zifen put his hands in front of his chest and shook them quickly. He said with a panicked face. I'm happy, these are tears of joy. You don't know, I've always wanted to give something to Master Kong, but he didn't like it at all. Finally, I can give it away. How can I not be happy? I'll take a taxi first. You can give me your ID card later. I'll help you with the car transfer procedures and get the license. He stuffed the key into Zhang Yilin's hand and ran away, for fear that Zhang Yilin would return the car to him. Brother, am I dreaming? Zhang Yilin held the key. Her little head was dizzy, and the happiness in her heart was overflowing. She could not hold it in and it was overflowing. Do you want me to pinch you? Jiang Tian said. I'll pinch you. Zhang Yilin pinched Jiang Tian's waist fiercely. Jiang Tian grimaced in pain and gasped. It seems to be true. Brother, this car is mine. That's great. More than 40 million. I'm a little rich woman. Zhang Yilin could no longer control the smile on her face. She hugged Jiang Tian, kissed him and jumped in the snow. Money grubber. Jiang Tian was speechless. You should have said so earlier. It's just a sports car. I'll give you as much as you want. The two of them got in the car. Zhang Yilin started the car and stepped on the gas. The red sports car sped away. Damn, this feeling of pushing back, it's so smooth, it's so stable. This feeling of speed, it's like flying a plane. This interior, TSK, how many Hermes bags can it be taken down? If the girls in our dormitory saw this, they would be so jealous. Huh. Zhang Yilin cheered excitedly. She kept introducing all kinds of data and technologies to Jiang Tian, as if she was a silly child who had just gotten her favorite toy. Jiang Tian stood at the side, smiling without saying anything. He had a private jet, a flying sword, and even played with interstellar battleships and sports cars in his previous life. He really didn't care about those things. Deep down, this cousin of his was still quite vulgar. Looking at Zhang Yilin's eyes, he thought so. However, a gratified smile appeared on his face. He could understand Zhang Yilin's joy and excitement. He was also happy to see Zhang Yilin like this. She drove a sports car, liked speed, liked makeup and beautiful clothes. She could laugh and cry whenever she wanted. This made Jiang Tian feel a sense of vitality. Young girls should be like this. They first went to a big shopping mall and bought a new set of clothes for Zhang Yilin. Then they ate rice dumplings, braised pork, soy milk and fried liver. Zhang Yilin was very happy after eating and drinking. She even drove to the city's highway. When she got down, it was already dusk. Brother, why is Qin Zifen so afraid of you? She only remembered to ask this important question after she was done being happy. Oh, I was at Xianglu Peak a while ago and I destroyed the Bai family of Yanjin. Jiang Tian said lightly. What the? Zhang Yilin's body trembled. Luckily, the car didn't crash into the fence. She was very shocked. Brother, you're so awesome. I heard about it. No wonder they call you the Arbiter. Zhang Yilin looked at Jiang Tian with admiration. She even felt that Jiang Tian was a bit unfamiliar, as if she had never met Jiang Tian before. It could be said that Qin Zifen was a high and mighty figure in her heart. Zhang Danfeng, the most outstanding person in their generation, was not even qualified to be Qin Zifen's follower. Every time Zhang Danfeng attended a party held by Qin Zifen, or helped Qin Zifen with something, it was like winning a prize. He would go to Zhang Jinghua to report the matter seriously and show off his merit. She found it hard to believe that Jiang Tian could control Qin Zifen. What about the Bai family of Yanjin? Not only were they 10 times more powerful than Qin Zifen, but they also exuded a mysterious energy as if they were gods from heaven. Secular clans like the Zhang clan didn't even have the qualifications to make friends with them. As for clans like the Song clan and the Lu clan, they might be able to. He often saw Zhang Danfeng trembling with fear when he mentioned the Bai clan, even if the members of the Bai clan weren't present. If Zhang Danfeng could find out some information about the Bai family, he would be immensely pleased with himself. But now, Jiang Tian had defeated the Bai family. This sounded like an ant overturning an elephant to Zhang Yilin. It was unbelievable. What's so great about that? They're just a bunch of ants. Jiang Tian cracked a smile and didn't take it to heart. The Bai family of Yanjin had a high status in Wuxia, so the battle at Xianglu Peak had a great impact. However, the battle wasn't as dangerous as defeating the 28th Japanese Mixed Regiment. In short, the 2 ancestral patriarchs and 9 overlords of the Bai family weren't as powerful as an army. During the battle, Jiang Tian had already reached the 6th level of qi refinement, so it was easy for him to suppress them. Damn, you're still panting when I compliment you. My brother is too domineering. Zhang Yilin rolled her eyes at Jiang Tian and then cracked a smirk. With my brother's protection, I can do whatever I want in Yanjin. We won't bully anyone, but if anyone dares to bully you, just tell me and I'll teach them a lesson. I'll make sure they're even more miserable than the Zhang family today. Jiang Tian laughed heartily as he took charge of everything. Only in front of a close relative like Zhang Yilin could he take off Grandmaster Zhang's hard and cold armor and smile comfortably. Great. If anyone dares to step on me again, I'll step on them 100 times more. Zhang Yilin felt that she had never been so proud and elated in all her years of being sensible. She waved her fists and shouted. Jiang Tian suddenly asked, "By the way, you were arrested by the Zhang family today. Didn't fourth uncle care about you? I remember that he dotes on you a lot." Sigh, ever since your fourth uncle was stripped of his position, he has been drowning his sorrows in alcohol all day. How can he have time to care about me? Zhang Yilin's smile gradually disappeared and a trace of sadness flashed in her eyes. She sighed. When I was taken away by Zhang Huchen today, he was still sleeping. Take me to see fourth uncle. Jiang Tian sighed in his heart. Fourth uncle had been reduced to this state because of the Jiang family. Half an hour later, the Bugatti Veyron stopped at the entrance of an alley called Sheeptail in the southern city district outside the 5th Ring Road. It was a very narrow, dark and dilapidated alley. Cars couldn't even drive in. The air was filled with the smell of rotting vegetables. Garbage was everywhere and dirty water flowed. On both sides of the road there were honeycomb coal electric cars and so on. The melted snow and dust formed a mud that could cover one's feet. The lead gray sky was cut into pieces by the disorderly electrical wires. Beside the trash can, a few stray dogs and cats were eating the leftovers. The two finally came to a dilapidated courtyard. Chapter 5:16. Jiang Tian smiled and said, Yilin, you have a good eye for investment. Once this courtyard house is demolished, you will be rich. Zhang Yilin took out the key and was about to open the door. She smiled stiffly and said, No. We rented this small courtyard. We don't have a house. Seeing that Jiang Tian was a little confused, Zhang Yilin opened the door and said with a smile, I did give the 50 million to my father, but he didn't use it to buy a house or set up a weapons research institute. As for where the money is, I don't know. Fourth uncle is not a person who spends money recklessly. He must have his considerations. Jiang Tian smiled but suddenly pulled Zhang Yilin's hand and said, They are quarreling inside. Don't rush in. Hey, it's always like this. A small quarrel every day, a big quarrel every 3 days, and a world war every week. It's going to break the dog's brain. Zhang Yilin shrugged indifferently. It seemed that she was used to these things. Don't worry, let me see the situation first. Jiang Tian scanned the courtyard with his divine sense. Everything in the courtyard could be seen at a glance. There was nowhere to hide. Brother, you are a voyeur. This is not good. Zhang Yilin said with a teasing face. What are you thinking? I am concerned about fourth uncle. Jiang Tian scanned the courtyard with his divine sense. The first thing he saw was fourth uncle Zhang Chenzhen drinking on a shabby sofa in the living room. There was a sketch on the coffee table in front of him. And the way he drank was too exaggerated. He was drinking a 5-pound plastic jug. Gulp. He drank a mouthful of white wine without any side dishes. Zhang Chenzhen was wearing a pair of high myopia glasses. One of the glasses had fallen off and was tied to his head with a rubber band. He was wearing a shabby blue work shirt. The collar and cuffs were worn out and the front of his shirt was full of stains. It was unknown how long it had been since he washed it. Zhang Chenzhen was 10 years younger than Zhang Wanqing. He was only in his early 30s. But he looked very old. His hair was white and there were even deep wrinkles. His waist was bent and he looked like a little old man. Seeing this, Jiang Tian could not help but sigh. In his memory, his fourth uncle in his previous life was either in a suit or a military uniform. He was always full of energy and had a dignified appearance. Who would have thought that he would be reduced to such a state? You You only know how to drink every day and don't go out to work. You're just sitting around and eating. Why don't you drink yourself to death? The person who scolded them was fourth aunt. She was angry and sad. I must have been blind to have married a good-for-nothing like you. Are you not a member of the Zhang clan? Could it be that they were not born from the same mother? Look at my sister-in-law, the wife of the secretary of the Political and Legal Affairs Committee. She travels abroad every day. A few days ago she went to the Champs-Élysées in France and bought 3 Louis Vuitton bags in one go. He even sent a message to show off and at me on purpose. I'm so angry. Let's not compare you to your 3 brothers. Let's compare you to the juniors Zhang Danfeng and Zhang Yue. What are you? Trash? Feces machine. Other than making shit you can't make anything else. Ayen, stop arguing. I have an idea. It's a flash of inspiration. You have to capture it. What made Jiang Tian nervous was that his fourth uncle suddenly smacked his head with joy. He picked up a pen and started to draw on the sketch. You're nothing. Fourth aunt grabbed the sketch on the table and waved her hands as she said, You're just daydreaming. Super energy stones, super energy cannons. They're the same as the perpetual motion machine. They're all pseudoscience. You don't want to listen to me, do you? If you don't listen to me, I'll tear it apart. Are you crazy? Ah Yen, don't tear it apart, don't tear it apart. Fourth uncle flopped. He knelt on the ground with tears streaming down his face. He looked like a madman as he begged bitterly. This is my 10 years of hard work. Once I figure it out, I'm telling you the Nobel Prize in Physics will be mine. Hawking and Einstein will have to kneel down and call me daddy. Jiang Tian could not help but laugh. Fourth uncle is too cute. You can just say that Hawking and Einstein are not as good as you, but you still have to kneel down and call me daddy. Xianxia Yen probably knew that her husband valued this sketch very much, so she threw it on the ground. Fourth uncle immediately laid down on the table and flattened the sketch. He even blew away the non-existent dust on it. He treasured it very much. Fourth uncle picked up the wine bottle and took a sip before he continued to write and calculate on it. Fourth aunt Xianxia Yen continued to reprimand him. On the whole it was peaceful. Perhaps they had already formed this pattern of getting along with each other. Look at you. You're a top student in the University of Science and Technology. You're an assistant professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. You're a genius mathematician and physicist with an IQ value of more than 200. If you ask me, your brain must have been flooded with water. You must have been kicked by a donkey, squeezed by a door, or eaten by a dog. Xianxia Yen continued to reprimand him. The old master has already said that you're not allowed to help the Jiang family. You're not allowed to help the Jiang family. Everyone else ran away, but you insisted on helping them. Now you've been stripped of your position in the family. You can't even be a guard. This is all within my expectations. To be honest, I've wanted to quit my position in the family for a long time. It's boring to fight and scheme all day long. I'm happy to be free and unfettered. Fourth uncle took a sip of wine and was immersed in his calculations. He was enjoying himself and did not even raise his head as he spoke. Yes, fourth uncle is a sensible person. Jiang Tian nodded in agreement. It's very soft. How did you hear it? So cold. Let's go in. Zhang Yilin, who was wrapped in a newly bought red down jacket, kept stomping her feet as if it could warm her up. I can still see it. Jiang Tian was too lazy to pay attention to him. He frowned and said, What's the hurry? We're having an interesting argument. But the military corporation's investment in the future weapons laboratory was stopped because of you. Why are you crying? Fourth aunt was also very good at quarreling. Her words hit the nail on the head. Those who could hurt you were usually the people closest to you. Fourth uncle's face changed immediately. He slammed the table and scolded anxiously. That's because they don't have foresight. My mathematical theory of microconnections can change history and rewrite the era. Let me tell you, if my theory can be applied to the fields of physics, aerospace, and weapons, then nuclear weapons will be useless. An aircraft carrier will be nothing more than a broken wooden ship. On a microscopic level, this theory can even change the order of atoms and create the densest metals. On a larger scale, it can even achieve space warp propulsion and achieve superluminal space travel. The thrusters created on the Earth's surface can even push the Earth out of the solar system. They don't know shit. Hey. The intellectuals are getting impatient. Even the professors know how to swear. If you're as good as you say, a perpetual motion machine would have been invented long ago. Xianxia's face was full of ridicule. After following Zhang Qinzhen for so many years, she actually knew a little about physics. She had a theory to support her arguments. Yes, a perpetual motion machine. Zhang Qinzhen's face was solemn. He sighed with emotion. For centuries, many people have spent their lives on it. We can say that they were stupid, but it was their exploration that allowed us to understand the laws of thermodynamics. Although they did not tell the future generations which path to take, they pointed out that some of the paths were dead ends. Xianxia snorted and said disdainfully, "The path you're taking is also a dead end. Your future generations will remember and respect you in the same way." Whatever. Zhang Qinzhen smiled faintly and said, "The ancient Greek geometer Apollonius summarized the theory of conic curves. 1,800 years later, the German astronomer Kepler applied it to the theory of planetary orbits." He stood up and waved his hands passionately. It was as if he was arguing, but it was more like he was giving a speech in front of tens of thousands of people. The mathematician Galois created group theory in 1831 AD. It was applied to physics more than 100 years later. The matrix theory was created in 1860 AD. It was applied to quantum mechanics 60 years later. The mathematician J. H. Lambert, Gauss, Riemann, Romaczewski, and others proposed and developed non-Euclidean geometry. Gauss spent his life exploring the practical application of non-Euclidean geometry, but he died with regrets. 170 years after the invention of non-Euclidean geometry, the theory of tensor analysis, which was useless at the time, became the core foundation of Einstein's general theory of relativity. My microcontinuum mathematics may only be applied a few hundred years later, but I'm willing to do it. I'm proud. I'm willing to endure 100 years of loneliness and loneliness, for the sake of human civilization. As he finished speaking, a faintly discernible pride crept up the corners of his eyes and brows. The landlord called 3 times today to collect this month's rent. Also, Ellen's living expenses are gone. It's a total of $5,000. But reality proved that Zhang Qinzhen's fourth aunt was the best at arguing. With a simple sentence, she broke Zhang Qinzhen's resolve in a second. "I'll think of something. Or I'll go carry some bricks tomorrow." Zhang Qinzhen lowered his head in shame and said pitifully, "A renowned mathematician and physicist working as a laborer? What a joke." Xianxia mocked. In Wuxia, the gravity of reality is too heavy. Any dream will fall to the ground and shatter into pieces. Zhang Qinzhen said philosophically. To a certain extent he had defended the dignity of intellectuals. He added, "Don't underestimate science. Do you know why I support the Jiang family medicine king group? Isn't that simple? Zhang Wanqing is your sister." Fourth aunt teased, "Didn't you say that she dotes on you a lot? Back then, when you wanted to study the useless mathematics department, the whole family was against it. They wanted you to study finance or administration, but she was the only one who supported you. Oh no, it should be said that she was the only one who pushed you into the fire pit." Zhang Qinzhen did not take Xianxia's mockery to heart. He had long known his wife's tricks. He sneered and said solemnly with sparkling eyes, "No. This reason is almost negligible. I saw Huang Zhihui's paper in Nature 2 months ago. His paper was ahead of its time, and I believed that they would be able to realize the ultramicromolecular extraction technology. That's why I secretly used the family fund to buy the Jiang family's shares. Facts have proven that I was right. The Medicine King Group's new products are selling well all over the country and the world. Their share prices are rising steadily. Furthermore, I dare to guarantee that the Medicine King Group will be the world's #1 pharmaceutical company in the future, or even a high-tech company." Chapter 517. Zhang Qinzhen let out a sigh and shook his head. "It's a pity that the old master has no foresight. He would never trust my judgment. That's why we missed that opportunity. If we could have held on for half a month, no, just a week, we would have made 10 times the profit. What's the point of doing so much for the Jiang family and the Zhang family? Who would care about that? Who knows?" Xianxia stopped arguing. Instead, she caressed Zhang Qinzhen's cheeks tenderly and said, "Look at what you've done now. You're neither human nor ghost." "Actually, I know what I've done for the Jiang family. Do you remember Jiang Tian? He's the guy who always peeps at people bathing. He asked Yilin to give me 50 million. Zhang Tian was speechless. You remember this matter quite clearly. Really? This Zhang Tian has a conscience. Where's the money? Xianxia Yan was pleasantly surprised. She tugged at Zhang Qing'an's arm and said tenderly, "Hubby, you're amazing. You have a good eye. I bought some experimental equipment and a few energy ores. I've already spent them all. I still owe you 2 million. Zhang Qing'an's words caused Xianxia Yan's tenderness to vanish in an instant. She jumped up and grabbed the frying pan. Clang, clang, clang. She slapped Zhang Qing'an's head a few times. Zhang Qingzhen, you wastrel. I'm going to kill you. Zhang Qingzhen ran around the house in the yard. He laughed as he ran. Honey, don't hit me. I'll catch a goat. Damn, he even learned Red Wolf's lines. The tenants in the courtyard came out to watch the show. One said, "Hey Sister Yan Air, your frying pan is too short. Can't you use the drying pole?" Another said, "Old Zhang, your positioning is not good. Can't you use the irregular snake maneuver?" Another said, "Old Zhang still uses the irregular snake maneuver? He still hasn't let himself go. Last time when he was drunk he swayed 3 times. Even a machine gun couldn't hit him." "Dad, Mom, are you done? You're making a fool of yourself." Suddenly Zhang Yilin's voice rang out from the door. "What are you laughing at? We're not outsiders and it's not like we haven't seen it before." Xianxia Yan yelled nonchalantly. Then she suddenly noticed that there was a handsome young man beside Zhang Yilin who was looking at her with a smile. "Who is this? Is he your classmate or boyfriend?" Xianxia Yan whispered to Zhang Yilin. Zhang Tian had changed too much. He looked mature and handsome. His temperament was especially refined. He then explained to Zhang Tian with an embarrassed smile. "Hee, we were just fooling around. It's too stuffy at home on such a cold day, so we went for a jog to exercise our bodies." "Mom, this is my cousin Zhang Tian." Zhang Yilin was speechless. It was one thing for her mother to not recognize her cousin, but she even said that he was her boyfriend. "Zhang Tian? It's really Zhang Tian." Zhang Qingzhen was stunned for a long time before he finally recognized him. He hugged Zhang Tian and said, "Oh Zhang Tian, you're really good. He even became so handsome. That's great. That's great." He even kissed Zhang Tian. "Fourth uncle, you've suffered." Although his fourth uncle's behavior was a little inappropriate, Zhang Tian still felt warm inside. When he was young, his fourth uncle always liked to let him ride a horse, pinch his cheeks and kiss him crazily. After so many years he still did not change. What's there to suffer? To me, there's no difference between living in a villa and a courtyard. It's just a bed. Zhang Qingzhen pulled Zhang Tian into the living room and sat down. The Zhang family actually only rented 2 houses. One of them was small and it was for Zhang Yilin. There was no door and only a curtain was hung. The other house was the kitchen, living room for the couple. It was filled with all kinds of broken furniture and there was no place to put one's feet. But if one looked closely, one would find that none of the furniture could be thrown away. Tea. Xianxia Yan hurriedly opened the honeycomb coal stove and boiled water to make tea. The tea was extremely cheap jasmine tea and it cost more than 10 yuan per pack. It's almost 2010 and it's the capital of Beijing. There aren't many places that don't have natural gas. Zhang Tian sighed in his heart. In fact, Zhang Tian did not need to ask. He already knew about his fourth uncle's situation. Zhang Qingzhen, on the other hand, kept asking questions and it was obvious that he was very concerned about the Jiang family. And most of his questions were about the situation at the Sunny Day laboratory. Suddenly, Zhang Tian's gaze fell on the sketch on the table. He was shocked. "Fourth uncle, can I take a look at this sketch?" Look, it's not something precious. Your fourth uncle is just messing around." Fourth aunt laughed. Zhang Qingzhen was dissatisfied. "What do you mean by messing around? This is a supercrystal cannon. Once it's mass-produced, it'll be useless against missiles. Let's put it this way. It's a single combat weapon, but its lethality is definitely higher than missiles." The more Zhang Tian looked at it, the more shocked he became. His expression became more and more solemn. This was clearly the structure of the Tai second-generation supercrystal railgun that Zhang Tian had seen in the extraterritorial space. How did his fourth uncle come up with something like this? Was he a genius, or a cultivator who had transmigrated and reincarnated with him? Zhang Tian did not dare to be sure. He asked, "Fourth uncle, Do you have any other similar drawings? There are many. They're all trash. It's too hard to wipe your butt and it's not good to start a fire. Fourth aunt opened the drawer and pulled out a stack of drawings which she passed to Zhang Tian. Zhang Tian flipped through the pages one by one and he was shocked to the extreme. Mustard seed bomb, fly of fury, 100 transformations crystal armor, puppet beast, crystal processor, crystal battleship, Kualian anti-demon beast defense system, and so on. Of course, these drawings were not labeled with these names. However, Zhang Tian could tell that they were magical weapons from the cultivation world. And there were all kinds of them, from mustard seed, super small, small, medium, large, giant to planetary and star states. Seeing this, Zhang Tian felt that it was inconceivable, but he could basically confirm that his fourth uncle was the same as him. He was definitely someone from the cultivation world. It was also possible that he had been possessed. When Zhang Tian thought of this, he immediately scanned fourth uncle's mind with his consciousness. As expected, he saw a lot of information and mental fragments floating in the depths of his mind. At this point, Zhang Tian could already confirm that fourth uncle had indeed been possessed. However, the possession of this soul was not very successful. Therefore, fourth uncle's soul was a combination of the soul of a scientist and a grandmaster refiner. Sometimes he would be deranged. Only when he was drunk would the hidden remnant soul emerge. However, this divine soul had already been shattered, and it would never be able to completely take over fourth uncle's physical body. Zhang Tian knew that in the cultivation world, there were some refiners who turned refining into a science. The level of their development was far beyond human technology. Take this Kualian system for example. If it was manufactured, it would be 10 times more powerful than an anti-missile system. For a moment, Zhang Tian's heart was greatly moved. He had been killing in the cultivation world for 10,000 years and deeply understood a principle. No government or ruler would allow two super forces to coexist, because it would seriously shake the foundation of society. A government was essentially a violent institution where one class ruled over the other classes. Once a more powerful force appeared, the country would no longer be a country. At present, whether it was Wuxia, the United States, Japan, the European Union, or other superpowers, all of them attached great importance to martial artists, ability users, spellcasters, and other kinds of cultivators. However, there was a prerequisite for all of this, and that was that these forces were suppressed by nuclear weapons and were under the control of the government. Nuclear weapons. Just like the sword of Damocles hanging over the heads of all kinds of cultivators, they could only parasitize and submit to the governments of various countries. Whether it was Yi Tianren, Zeus, the Wolf King, the Blood Ancestor, the Professor, many experts were no exception. And once Zhang Tian broke through to the foundation establishment level or even higher, he would be able to display violent power comparable to or even surpassing nuclear weapons. At this time, no country would allow him to survive. Even the superpowers of the world would band together to attack him. Of course, if Zhang Tian could cultivate peacefully without having to display this kind of power, it would be good. It would also be good if he could find the ruins of immortality as soon as possible, enter it, and use it as a springboard to step onto the Stargate and cross the void. But everything had a what if. Once Zhang Tian had to display this kind of power on Earth, he would definitely be suppressed by the superpowers. Then there was only one way left for Zhang Tian: establishing a country. And establishing a country couldn't be done without weapons, otherwise it would be courting death. So Zhang Tian had to prepare the relevant weapons before announcing the establishment of a country to the world. But if Zhang Tian wanted to purchase modern weapons, he would probably be blocked by the superpowers, and they would not give him the time to do so. And fourth uncle's talent in this area gave him hope. Take the Kualian system for example. Its defensive power was far superior to any existing anti-missile system, and its offensive power was comparable to nuclear weapons. But it did not meet the definition of a modern weapon at all. It was more like a magical weapon. The materials he needed were not uranium or explosives or special fuels, but various ores and crystals with energy that had never been recognized. Zhang Tian, you don't know, but your fourth uncle has made us suffer in order to help the Jiang family. Look, we don't even have a house to live in. We're just sitting there and eating. All the money you gave us before. Xianxia looked at Zhang Tian stammeringly and rambled on, but she was abruptly interrupted by Zhang Tian's words. Fourth uncle, I'll give you another billion. As soon as these words came out. 10 billion. Xianxia was dumbfounded. She gulped, her voice trembling and her face was filled with disbelief. 1 billion. I'm rich. I've reached the heavens in a single bound. Zhang Danfeng had the full support of the Zhang family to set up the Software Pioneer Park. But his personal wealth was not even 1 billion. Zhang Qinzhen was very calm. He waved his hand and smiled. Jiang Tian, I know you mean well, but you don't have to pity me. Besides, Medicine King Group is expanding rapidly, and it's time for us to use money. Ouch. He screamed in pain and turned to Xianxia. Why did you pinch me? It hurts. He said angrily. Jiang Tian smiled and said, Fourth uncle, I'm not pitying you. I'm not helping you. I'm investing in you. Chapter 518. Investment. Xianxia was puzzled. Jiang Tian smiled and said, That's right. The weapons that fourth uncle has researched are very valuable. I'll support you if you continue with your research. On the sketches of his fourth uncle, there were many data indicators and calculations of the ores needed. Most of these ores were found on Earth. They should be substitutes for the energy crystals that were commonly found in the cultivation world. The calculations showed that Zhang Qinzhen had also done a lot of basic research on refining equipment. At least his general direction was correct. In terms of refining, it could be said that Jiang Tian's practical experience and theoretical level were both at the peak of perfection. When he was still a gold core cultivator, he had once presided over the construction of a celestial ring crystal battleship called Devourer. It only took a day for it to absorb all the energy on a planet and annihilate it. However, Jiang Tian had a huge shortcoming, and that was his lack of understanding of the ores and materials on Earth. In fact, his lack of understanding of the resources on Earth had already been revealed during the construction of the Fersky Laboratory and the revival of the Medicine King Group. After all, he had never cultivated on Earth in his previous life. When he committed suicide by jumping off a cliff, he was taken away by his master. Fortunately, Jiang Tian's luck was not bad. He had discovered a lot of spirit herbs and great herbs for refining pills on Earth. He had found some at the Shinong School, the Chinese Society of Singapore, and the Cherry Blossom Society. Therefore, his ability to refine pills and make medicine was not greatly affected. However, Jiang Tian discovered that the ores and energy stones used for refining equipment on Earth were even rarer than the spirit herbs and great herbs. So far, he had only discovered a few ores for refining equipment, such as chalcedony, Gingjin iron essence, immortal tear black gold, and dark space stone for refining storage rings. The ores and metals needed for refining equipment were too few. It was difficult to refine large magical equipment or magical equipment, let alone super-large magical equipment of the planet level. Under such circumstances, Jiang Tian needed the help of Zhang Qinzhen, who had a deep understanding of Earth's materials and resources as well as physics. Jiang Tian, is the research I've done really that valuable? You have to see it clearly. Don't be harmed by me, hiss. Zhang Qinzhen seemed a little unconfident and wanted to refuse. Needless to say, he was pinched by his aunt again. Your research is really valuable. Can even be said to be epic-making. Also, stop drinking. What kind of research can you come up with when you're in a daze from drinking? I'll give you some pills, they're good for your brain. Jiang Tian stuck his hand into his pocket and pretended to rummage for a while before taking out a bottle of medicinal pills. Spirit-nourishing and mind-clearing pill. This pill could strengthen the brain, nourish and strengthen the mind, including the fragmented memories in Zhang Qinzhen's mind. It could even allow a person to enter into a super-lucid state, giving them an astonishing ability to calculate and think. Jiang Tian believed that within 3 years or even just 1 year, fourth uncle would be able to make a major breakthrough and create a super-magical weapon that could rival the modern armies of the great powers of the world. I definitely won't drink it. The medicine given by Jiang Tian had to be of good quality. Hehe. Zhang Qinzhen hurriedly received it happily. Just take 1 pill a month. Don't take more than that. One more thing, your research must be highly confidential. Don't let anyone see it. This belongs to a completely different scientific system. No existing scientists can give valuable suggestions. Instead, it may cause some trouble. Jiang Tian said as he picked up a pen from the table and made a few changes to the calculations. We'll listen to you. Zhang Qinzhen and his wife nodded like chickens pecking at rice. Jiang Tian asked for Zhang Qinzhen's bank account number and got up to leave. Jiang Tian, we haven't seen each other for so long. Let's have dinner together. Xianxia beamed and warmly urged him to stay. No need. Zhang Tian said with a smile as he walked out. I still have things to do. You don't have to get too close to the Zhang family. Why tie up a ship that is about to sink so tightly? Sigh, the Zhang family's actions are really disappointing. Zhang Qinzhen nodded in agreement. Don't worry, we'll remember. Let's just live our lives and ignore them. Xianxia nodded. Brother, I'll drive you. Zhang Yilin knew that Zhang Tian did not drive, so she hurriedly got up to send him off. On the way, Zhang Tian called Yi Ziwei and asked her to transfer the money to Zhang Qinzhen. These funds were all personal assets that Zhang Tian had deposited in a Swiss bank account. It had nothing to do with the Medicine King Group, so the transfer was convenient and fast. Zhang Yilin and Zhang Tian found a restaurant outside to grab a bite before driving to Fragrant Hill. When they arrived at the foot of Fragrant Hill, Zhang Tian said faintly, Yilin, you should go home. The mountain roads are not easy to drive on, and the roads are slippery and icy. It's not safe to drive. Brother, you live here now? Zhang Yilin stopped the car and looked at the magnificent and luxurious villa at the foot of the mountain. Her face was full of admiration. This is a famous area for the rich. I heard that only the rich can afford to live here. Fragrant Hill in winter was very beautiful. It was covered in white snow and everything was covered in frost. The lofty mountains and precipitous ridges were like hibernating jade elephants and white dragons. There was a kind of desolate beauty. Red maple leaves that looked like they were on fire were exposed in the white snow, adding a touch of warmth and vitality. This was originally a scenic spot, and Yanjing City had always restricted commercial and residential development in this area. This made these villas even more rare and precious. Those who lived here were basically the richest people in Wuxia. No, I live in Yuhua Villa. Zhang Tian got out of the car and stood by the window. He smiled and said, It's at the back of Fragrant Hill. Yuhua Villa. Zhang Yilin stuck out her tongue in amazement and said with a smile, Then I'll accompany you to take a look. Sure. You can stay here tonight. It just so happens that your sister Qing'er also misses you. Zhang Tian slightly nodded. Zhang Yilin suddenly cheered and jumped out of the car. She held Zhang Tian's arm and walked up the mountain along the winding road. After just a few steps, Zhang Tian saw a beautiful figure standing quietly under the dim street lights, looking down the mountain. Ling, why are you here? I'm waiting for you to come back. Seeing Zhang Tian appear, Huang Linger's beautiful eyes lit up. She turned into a beautiful crescent shape and greeted Zhang Tian. When she arrived in front of Zhang Tian, she lowered her head and stammered with a blushing face. It's Sister Qing'er who asked me to wait for you. She was afraid that something would happen to you when you went to the Zhang family. She was wearing a beige woolen windbreaker, aqua blue jeans, brown leather boots, and a red woolen hat with 2 pom-poms. Her long black hair flowed down from the brim of the hat like a waterfall. Her small face seemed to be whiter than the snow on the tree, but it was a little red from the cold wind. Maybe she was shy. How could Zhang Tian not know that she must have made the decision to wait for him? Qing'er cared about him, but she knew that he could deal with the Zhang family, so she was not worried at all. On the other hand, Huang Linger had too little experience, so it was inevitable that she would be anxious. My cousin Zhang Yilin. Huang Linger. Zhang Tian gave a simple introduction and casually squeezed her small hand. Are you cold? Oh, it's quite cold. Zhang Yilin rolled her eyes, coughed and joked, taking advantage of a girl, I'll tell on you. Huang Linger's small hand that was being held by Zhang Tian seemed to have been stung by a scorpion, and she retracted her hand. Her expression was a little unnatural. Zhang Tian smiled faintly and said, Go ahead and tell on me. Your sister-in-law knows that she's also my woman. Brother, you've learned bad things. Zhang Yilin was dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. But thinking about it, her brother was so capable, so it was normal for him to have more women. Not to mention those top families, even the uncles of the Zhang family looked serious, but in fact which one of them didn't have multiple wives and concubines? They either openly ate with their wives or secretly kept a few college students as their mistresses. Huang Linger suddenly felt warmth in her heart, but her nose was also sour. Sparkling and translucent tears immediately filled her eyes and were about to burst out of her eyes. She suddenly quickened her steps and walked to the front. Her shoulders were slightly shaking and her face was already covered in tears. She's crying? Did I say something wrong and offend sister-in-law? Zhang Yilin held Jiang Tian's hand and asked in a low voice with a face full of worry. It's okay. Let her calm down. Jiang Tian smiled. In Huang Linger's view, this should be the first time that Jiang Tian acknowledged her relationship with him. In fact, with Jiang Tian's 10,000 years of cultivation, he had long been indifferent to the relationship between men and women. But for her, this was undoubtedly a rare recognition. Whoosh, whoosh, boom. On the mountain road in front, fireworks suddenly jumped up and bloomed in the air, like 1,000 trees blooming in the east on a windy night. It's beautiful. I love fireworks the most. Seeing this, Zhang Yilin clapped her hands and cheered, showing a bit of childishness. At the end of the year, the atmosphere of the new year was getting more and more obvious. It was probably the children in the nearby villa area who were setting off fireworks. Jiang Tian saw that Huang Linger, who had disappeared at the corner of the mountain road, actually turned around and ran back in a panic. What's the matter? Jiang Tian asked. Nothing. Let's go. Huang Linger's tears had dried. She shook her head with a slightly red face and followed behind Jiang Tian. Under the bright yellow light of the street lamps, there was no one on the long mountain road covered with snow. There was a bit of fragrance of grass and trees in the cool air. The mountain wind blew and the snow on the trees fluttered down, giving people a sense of tranquility and beauty. After passing the corner of the mountain road, Jiang Tian found a few young men and women in their early 20s setting off fireworks, smoking and playing by the roadside. Behind them was the fragrant hill villa that Jiang Tian and the others could see from the foot of the mountain. Shoo! Among the crowd, there was a tall, handsome boy with an overbearing and unruly aura. He put his finger in his mouth and whistled sharply. He shouted at Huang Linger, "Beauty, why are you back again? Do you miss your brother? Come on, what are you afraid of? Beauty, let's set off fireworks together. Let's play together. We're not bad guys." The other boys also cheered, and their eyes with bad intentions caressed Huang Linger's curvy body. Chapter 519. The girls who were with them were all smiling without saying a word. Their eyes were full of ridicule as if they were used to the behavior of these boys. Huang Linger was shocked. She lowered her head and ignored them. She only gently grabbed the corner of Jiang Tian's windbreaker. Jiang Tian looked at this scene and thought of her panicked look. He knew that someone must have hit on or harassed Huang Linger and scared her. Although she was now a cultivator, it was hard for her to change her state of mind. She still had the mentality of an ordinary person. Her experience and heart were even purer than Qing'er's. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was timid. "Pan Jejun, what are you doing? This is my cousin and cousin-in-law. Stop it." Zhang Yilin stopped in her tracks and turned her head to look at the youth who was whistling with a displeased expression. She frowned. "Yilin, you have a cousin? Why haven't I heard of him?" A girl sitting on the hood of a Lamborghini said with a cigarette in her hand. The girl was wearing a leather jacket and studded high heels. She was wearing smoky makeup and looked like a punk. "My cousin just came to Yanjin. He's the crown prince of the Medicine King group from Jinling." Zhang Yilin introduced him proudly. "Never heard of him." The punk girl and a few young masters shook their heads and smiled disdainfully. Yanjin was the capital with 3,000 years of history and 800 years of history. It was the political, cultural, educational, and economic center of Wuxia. It occupied a lot of resources, and residents of Yanjin enjoyed benefits that other provincial cities couldn't compare with. Even the old hooligans in the alley looked down on foreigners. They thought that they were better than others, and their sense of superiority was overflowing. Not to mention these rich people who enjoyed all kinds of privileges. The residents of Yanjin were all untouchables in the eyes of the crown prince. Got it. He should be the cousin of the Jiang family of the Medicine King group. He cut ties with the Zhang family. I don't know what happened, but Zhang Danfeng came to my dad again today and said that he wanted to introduce the Jiang family to my dad. The arrogant Pan Jejun smiled proudly and looked at Jiang Tian with even more disdain. The Pan family was considered a first-tier family in Yanjin. Pan Jejun's father was the deputy director of the General Drug Administration. His family also secretly held shares in several vaccine companies. Their strength was similar to that of the Zhang family. Young people like Pan Jejun were only in their 20s and were still in college. However, they were influenced by their families and had a clear understanding of social status. If he had encountered elites like Zhang Danfeng and Zhang Yue, or elders like Zhang Zhongguo's uncle, Pan Jijun would definitely not dare to offend them. However, when he met a disciple like Zhang Yilin who wasn't valued, or even a disciple of the Jiang family who needed help from the Pan family, he didn't take her seriously at all. Oh, they've both severed ties before. The other young men came to a sudden understanding and nodded successively, and they laughed with disdain as if Jiang Tian was just an ant. To be able to live in the fragrant hill villas, they were all descendants of famous and promising families in Beijing. Almost every family had a leader at the level of a minister or a senior executive of a central enterprise. They didn't care about the Zhang family's distant relatives and the country bumpkins from Jinling. Jiang Tian didn't bother to argue with these kids. He held Huang Linger's hand and walked up the mountain. Don't blame me for not reminding you. The back mountain is where the top families live. The mountain has been sealed off and there are security guards. You can't go up. Everyone in that place has a powerful background. If you offend those big shots, you will be beaten to death. Idiot. Pan Jejun saw this and scolded him with disdain. You came from a small place. You don't even know what the Xianglu Peak and Yuhua Mountain villas of Fragrant Hill mean. Pan Jejun was only in his 20s, but he was bossing Jiang Tian around as if he was scolding an ignorant child. However, the young men and women around them thought it was reasonable. The Pan family was backed by the Fu Hongxue family and controlled the domestic pharmaceutical industry. They also happened to be in charge of the Jiang family's Medicine King group. Wasn't it normal for them to scold a country bumpkin? Jiang Tian frowned slightly and turned his head to look at him. He was the strongest martial artist in Wuxia and the leader of the Heaven Alliance. When had he ever been so disrespected? How dare you stare at me? What are you looking at? Pan Jejun's eyes widened when he saw Jiang Tian looking at him with an unfriendly expression. He was a little annoyed. This kid is obviously not convinced. Fine, I'll let you know today that you have to lower your head when you're under someone else's roof. Your girlfriend? He raised his chin at Huang Linger and said frivolously, don't you want to suck up to the Pan family? Fine, lend me your girlfriend for a night, okay? I promise I'll give the Jiang family the green light. Jiang Tian walked over slowly and said calmly, Kid, kneel down and apologize and I won't break your legs. Pan Jejun was stunned and looked at Jiang Tian in disbelief. He then laughed and slapped his thigh with a cigarette in his mouth. Funny, this is too funny. This is the funniest joke I've heard this year. Are you a clown sent by monkeys? The crowd burst into laughter. Do you know who young Master Jun is? He's the young master of the Pan family, one of the top 30 in Yanjing. Even if Zhang Danfeng was here, he wouldn't dare to be so stubborn. The punk girl in the leather jacket also flicked the ash from her long and thin female cigarette. She didn't even look at Jiang Tian as she sneered, that's right. And his father is in charge of the Food and Drug Administration. You can't afford to offend him. It's your honor to have young Master Jun flirt with your girlfriend. You're courting death with such an attitude. Country bumpkins, ignorant and ignorant. Those big bosses in Wuxia, including the boss of Yunnan Baiyao, are all scrambling to send women to young Master Jun's bed. The crowd looked at Jiang Tian with ridicule, looking forward to the scene of Jiang Tian kneeling down, admitting defeat and handing over the woman with both hands. It was not the first time they had seen such a scene. It was not rare at all. Do you know who I am? Are you scared? It's your honor to play with your woman. What are you so nervous about? Pan Jejun curled his lips and held the cigarette in his mouth. He looked up proudly and raised his eyebrows as if he was waiting for Jiang Tian to admit his mistake and beg for mercy. Slap. What he got in response was a crisp slap in the face. In the sudden crisp sound, Pan Jejun flew out like a rag doll and hit the mountain wall on the side of the road. The snow and gravel rolled down before he slowly slid down. The crowd was shocked when they saw this. The crowd was dead silent. Young Master Jun's cheek cracked and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He immediately fainted. How could you hit someone? The punk-style girl screamed in panic. Hit someone? What is this? I said I would break his leg. Under the horrified gaze of the crowd, Jiang Tian walked over lazily and kicked Pan Jejun's calf. Crack. A crisp sound that made people's hearts palpitate. Ah. It hurts. Pan Jejun woke up from the pain. His neck suddenly straightened and he screamed in pain. The veins in his neck were like purple earthworms. I thought you didn't know pain. Jiang Tian's face didn't change at all. He kicked his other calf again. Blood gushed out and his calf was broken like a stick. It was definitely a comminuted fracture. Under the excruciating pain, Pan Jiajun fainted again. Many socialites in Yanjin turned pale and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They were terrified and couldn't believe what they were seeing. They couldn't believe that Jiang Tian would hit Pan Jiajun. It was like an ant provoking an elephant. Only the punk girl quickly rushed to the front of Jiang Tian. Flustered and exasperated, she waved her hands and shouted, "Boy, you dare to hit people, do you know who he is? Who we are? Let me tell you, shut up. I don't care who you are. Even if you're God, I'll overturn his throne if you bully my woman." Jiang Tian said calmly. "Little brat, you're in trouble. My dad is from Wuxia Oil." The punk girl was so angry that she laughed. Her slightly widened eyes suddenly became cold and ruthless. She pointed at Jiang Tian's nose as if she wanted to threaten him. "It's better for women to be gentle and virtuous." Jiang Tian slapped her to the ground and kicked her soft belly. The kick caused the girl to bend over like a cooked prawn with her mouth wide open. Wah! She spat out a mouthful of stinky green juice. It was a half-digested dinner and maybe some red wine. "Are you Mr. Jiang from Jinling? You've gone too far." A girl with long hair draped over her shoulders, gentle features, and a rather scholarly air walked out of the crowd. She raised her small face proudly and looked at Jiang Tian. "You actually hit a weak girl. Don't you think that's too ungentlemanly?" Everyone looked at Wang Xinzhu with reverence. Wang Xinzhu was an anomaly in the circle of disciples of the ministries. Her father was in the Ministry of Education and was in charge of scientific research in universities. Wang Xinzhu, who was born in a scholarly family, had excellent academic results. He was a top student in the business school of Yanjing University. He had excellent eloquence and was once the champion of the International University Debate Competition. If they weren't childhood friends, Wang Xinzhu wouldn't be willing to play with them at all. True respect for your opponent is to leave no room for negotiation. Women can hold up half the sky. Ignoring the angry and fearful gazes of the crowd, Jiang Tian shrugged indifferently and said, "I'm not a person who cares about women. I'll hit women too. Not to mention that this kind of shrew isn't a woman at all. You should shut up too or I'll hit you too. You." Wang Xinzhu was so scared that she subconsciously took a step back. Jiang Tian said lazily, "If you want revenge, come at me. I live on the mountain Yuhua Mountain Villa." Then he left with the two girls. Seeing Jiang Tian and the others leave, many of the rich young masters in Yanjing gnashed their teeth in anger. "This bastard is too arrogant. We can't let him go." Some called the ambulance, some called their parents, and some discussed how to deal with Jiang Tian. Chapter 520. To Jiang Tian, Pan Jijun's matter was just a small interlude. He didn't care about it at all. However, he suddenly remembered something. Pan Jijun said that Zhang Danfeng wanted to introduce the Jiang family to his father. What is this guy thinking? Has he figured out my background and is trying to get on my good side? This Zhang family is quite well informed. I've really underestimated their intelligence network. Jiang Tian wouldn't be surprised if the Zhang family did this. They were all about profit and didn't care about anything else. My mother has always had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. She still has some feelings for the Zhang family. I'm afraid she won't be able to resist their familial attacks. The next few days were peaceful. Jiang Tian took Qing'er and Ling-er to cultivate in Yuhua Mountain Villa. Yi Ziwei and Jiang Bangxia were in charge of the company registration and the relocation of the property. With the support of Xin Mange, Chen Zifan and the others, these things were quickly settled. Basically, after the Spring Festival, Yaowang Holdings could start operating and the main staff could move over to work. Huang Linger's comprehension was good. She progressed quickly and quickly mastered shadow forming and entanglement. She was also getting more and more familiar with the divine withered glory technique. Today Jiang Tian had just finished teaching the two girls. Qin Zifan nodded and bowed as he came in. "Mr. Jiang, the heads of the 6 families have sent a lot of treasures. Would you like to take a look? Bring them all here. Let them in." Jiang Tian said indifferently. Qin Zhong, head of the Qin family, and his son Qin Zongheng, offer 30 pieces of jade marrow and some of the ancestral steel spine rock wolf's fur and blood essence. They're useful. Keep them. Hearing this, Qin Zhong and Qin Zongheng were overjoyed. Lin Fingmian, head of the Qin family, offers a book of the Taihao 9 primordial sword. Idiot, what do I need this for? Lin Fingmian was so scared that he knelt on the ground. Master Kong, please forgive me. In the future I will find a better. The head of the Luo family, Luo Chenbei, and his beloved son Luo Yunkai, present a set of golden silk armor. Oh, so you're the head of the Luo clan. How thoughtful of you. Jiang Tian glanced at him and nodded slightly. Sun family's patriarch, Sun Jiming, offers a section of heaven thunder bamboo. This is not bad. Jiang Tian's eyes flashed with joy as he nodded his head in praise. Once the treasure presentation was over, Jiang Tian sipped his tea and said indifferently, regardless of whether it's good or bad, I appreciate your kind intentions. This represented a form of submission. From then on, Yanjin was Jiang Tian's world. The more lackeys there were, the more options there were. Whether it was searching for cultivation resources or exploring the mysteries of the ruins of immortality, these people could be used. Jiang Tian didn't need to kill them all. Master Kong has acknowledged us. His life is saved. The tycoons of Yanjin looked at each other and saw the joy on each other's faces. By the way, where's the Fu clan? Jiang Tian put down his teacup and suddenly found that Fu Hongshue's descendants hadn't appeared. Master Kong, I was just about to report this to you. Qinzi nodded and smiled obsequiously. After Fu Hongshue's death, his nephew Fu Jioge took over the position of the head of the Fu clan. What do you think? Do you want to meet him? Why do you want me to meet him? Jiang Tian asked with a half-smile. After Fu Hongxue was killed by Master Kong, the Fu clan has been in chaos. The sons are fighting for the position of the head of the Fu clan. Qin Zifan smiled obsequiously. There was a hint of cunning between his eyebrows. He nodded and bowed. This lowly one can't do that. If old Fu knows about this from the heavens, he won't leave either. Don't worry. So, I helped the Fu clan choose a virtuous and talented disciple to be the head of the Fu clan. The obsequious look on his face deepened. He cupped his hands and smiled. However, you, Grandmaster Jiang, are a martial arts adjudicator. I'll feel uneasy if I decide on my own. I'm not smart enough. You might not be satisfied with the person I choose. Your eyes are like torches and you're the best at judging people. It's better for you to take a look. He kept saying servant and little in a servile manner. Jiang Tian thought that this guy must have been a eunuch in ancient times. Jiang Tian held his forehead helplessly and said, Oh, okay. Stop talking nonsense. Let him in. Okay. Qin Zifan left happily. Not long after, he brought in a fat man with a big belly and a big belly. He was panting heavily. Your servant Fatty Fu greets Master Kong. I wish Master Kong a long and prosperous life. I wish you to unify the Jianghu and be invincible. The fat man was dressed luxuriously and wore a huge jade ring on his thumb. When he saw Jiang Tian, he kowtowed like a chicken pecking at rice. Jiang Tian scanned him with his divine perception. He found that not only did this guy have no martial arts cultivation, but his body had long been hollowed out by wine, women, wealth, and anger. He was simply a good-for-nothing. Stand up and talk. What's your name? Who are you to Fu Hongxue? Jiang Tian crossed his legs and stretched out his hand. Qin Zifan quickly poured a cup of tea for Jiang Tian and handed it to him. Master Kong, my name is Fu Jioge. I'm the boss of Jioge Entertainment Company and Fu Hongshue's distant nephew. Fatty Fu stood up with reverence. His face was full of flattery and he was so excited that his body trembled slightly. Oh, I know you. Jiang Tian nodded. This kid came from a military family and was a big shot in the entertainment industry. He had invested in many film and television productions and signed many A-list artists. His Jioge Entertainment Company was neck and neck with Bai Choufei's Entertainment Company. He was also in the top 100 on the Forbes list. I didn't expect that my lowly name would reach Master Kang's ears. I'm really scared. This guy boldly handed over a list of names. Jiang Tian frowned and said, What's this? Fatty Fu doesn't have any other skills. He's just the head of an opera troupe, but there are a few good-looking girls in the company. Fatty Fu's words were humble. He smiled slyly and said, Like Sister Bing Bing and Fei Fei, they're all gentle and lovely. If Master Kong likes any of them, just say the word and I'll send them to you tonight. It's a little filial piety from a disciple. I accept your filial piety, but there's no need. Jiang Tian's face turned slightly cold and he waved his hand. Are you retarded? Master Kong is a godlike figure. Why would he like these dirty actors? Seeing this, Qin Zifan was shocked. He lifted his leg and kicked Fatty Fu's butt. He scolded angrily, "Get out of here. Master Kong, please forgive me. Patriarch Qin, please forgive me. I'll take my leave now." Fatty Fu was so shocked that he was sweating profusely. He bowed repeatedly and retreated out of the door. Trash. How dare you pollute Master Kang's eyes with these vulgar women? What a disgrace. Qin Zifan pointed at Fatty Fu's back and cursed. Good for trash. Jiang Tian smiled and said, but if you help him, will the other disciples of the Fu family agree? Of course they won't. Qin Zifan made a throat-slitting gesture and said with a sinister smile, however, Qin Zongheng and I have wiped them out. The rest are all trash who are worse than Fatty Fu. If a cripple chooses a general, then it's Fatty Fu's turn, right? Qin Zifan was indeed despicable and shameless. Such a trash was chosen to be the patriarch of the Fu family, then the Fu family would only exist in name. That's right. Jiang Tian said with a spurious smile. Your shameless appearance is quite similar to my brother Bing Hua's style back then. Hee, Master Kong, I'll be honest with you. In the entire Yanjin, if I say that I'm the second most despicable and ruthless person, no one would dare to say that they are the first. Qin Zifan smiled and said, however, Master Kong, you are a person of virtue and prestige. There are some things that are inconvenient for you to do. What kind of status do you have? Trampling on these ants, wouldn't that dirty your feet? Wouldn't that be too degrading? Just leave these matters to me. I promise that it will be done properly. Very good. Jiang Tian narrowed his eyes and nodded. Sometimes he really couldn't leave these vicious dogs. Now that he was called the martial arts adjudicator of Wuxia, he naturally had to pay attention to his image. In the crowd, Qin Zhong glanced at Qin Zongheng and sighed in a low voice. Zongheng, your cultivation is higher than Qin Zifan's, but you are not as smart as him. I understand. From now on, I will do everything from Master Kang's perspective. Qin Zongheng nodded humbly. At this moment, Lin Fengmian let out a hollow laugh and said, Master Kong, you don't seem to be satisfied with the treasures that we have offered. However, this old man once heard a secret. It said that there is a sacred fruit in the African rainforest that can rapidly increase one's cultivation. African rainforest? Jiang Tian frowned. Oh, the Lin family has some influence in the energy and mining industry in Wuxia. This news was also discovered by the mining company. Lin Fengmian took out a photo and handed it to Jiang Tian and said with a smile, Master Kong, please take a look. This is... Seeing this, Jiang Tian was shocked and his eyes widened. This is the Immortal Ascension Blood Arrow Orchid. This was obviously taken in a tropical rainforest. The plants were lush, the trees covered the sky, and poisonous insects and pythons were entrenched. And on a cliff next to a waterfall, there was a huge red flower growing. Master Kong, this strange herb is called the blood orchid by the locals. This place is located in the Longevity tribe of the African island nation of Sidoni. Seeing Jiang Tian's surprised expression, Lin Fengmian knew that he had made the right bet. He said excitedly, according to some scientific teams, this herb contains mysterious ingredients and has the power to rejuvenate people and make them immortal. According to our investigation, the black people in that tribe can indeed live for 200 to 300 years without dying. Haha, the power to rejuvenate people and make them immortal. Jiang Tian's eyes flashed and he said with a smile, it's not that exaggerated, but this herb is indeed very useful to me. This kind of herb was usually called the foundation-building herb in the cultivation world. It contained surging spiritual energy that could be transformed into true essence. It was the most effective herb for breaking through from the late-stage qi refinement stage to the foundation-building stage. Of course, the dragon marrow spirit vein and the winchim herb were very good, but in terms of effect, they were far inferior to the Immortal Ascension Blood Arrow Orchid. It could be said that the dragon marrow spirit vein was more suitable for Ling and Yi Ziwei, who had ordinary physiques and lower cultivation. And this divine herb was 10 times or even 100 times more powerful than the winchim herb. It was exactly what Jiang Tian and Qing'e, who had divine and immortal physiques, needed the most at this stage. Chapter 521. But it's said that this kind of divine herb is protected by powerful gods of other races. Other than the natives who worship them, no one else has ever gotten it. Lin Fengmian said with a stern expression. Sidoni is rich in mineral resources. Many warlords have been fighting for many years. These warlords even have the support of the superpowers, but no armed force dares to provoke the gods of the longevity tribe. It's said that there's a god with a bird's head and a human body. He has black wings and can spit out high-temperature flames. Another god is 10 meters tall. His body is like a rock. When he walks, the earth will shake and the mountains will shake. He can overturn a tank with his bare hands. TSK, are you talking about Kwafu? 10 meters tall. His body is like a rock. What a joke. Seeing that Jiang Tian was very interested, Chen Zifan rolled his eyes at Lin Fengmian in disdain. He was very jealous. I've done so many bad things and I've been at his beck and call. Only then did I get Grandmaster Zhang's approval. You, on the other hand, have made Master Kong look at you in a different light just by hearing some myths and legends of the old tribes. Zifan, don't interrupt. Jiang Tian rolled his eyes at him. Even though he was a cultivator, Chen Zifan's understanding of life forms was still too shallow. Jiang Tian had seen many life forms when he traveled across the universe in a super crystal energy battleship, burning and looting. Among them were silicon-based life forms. They used distortion force fields to bind sand and minerals and had the power of the earth. The larger the force field of these silicon-based life forms, the larger the body they condensed and the more powerful they were. Some mighty figures were hundreds of meters tall or even thousands of meters tall. They even directly evolved into ships and weapons like super ships with intelligence, souls and self-consciousness. This race was very terrifying. They could survive without oxygen and had strong adaptability. Their ability to perform tasks in the universe was even more terrifying. They had once occupied several galaxies and kept expanding like cancer cells. Jiang Tian defeated them, but it was also a hard battle that lasted hundreds of years. It was very thrilling. If it was written, it would definitely surpass any science fiction. This might be the ruins of immortality. Those gods of the alien races might also have been left there. After listening to Lin Fengmian's story, Jiang Tian narrowed his eyes slightly. In ancient times, the cultivation civilization on Earth might have been very developed. There were also many races. There were huge spirit beasts running around, spirit birds that covered the sky and covered the sun, and even crystal energy battleships that roamed the periphery of Earth. This planet is getting more and more interesting. Why didn't I notice it in my previous life? In his previous life, Jiang Tian had also crossed the void after reaching the soul formation stage. After going through untold hardships, he returned to Earth and brought Qing'er's body to the extraterritorial space to be buried. At that time, Jiang Tian was full of regret and guilt, so he was not in the mood to cultivate. He just walked around the Earth and left in a hurry without even scanning the place with his spiritual awareness. Therefore he did not find anything obvious. Of course, it was also possible that hundreds of years later, these gods and their ruins would all disappear. At that time, Earth was flourishing in science and technology, but its spiritual energy had been completely exhausted. It had become a lifeless, dead planet in the eyes of cultivators. However, so what if it's a mutant from the ruins of immortality? I've killed countless cultivators in my previous life. Jiang Tian sneered, and a hint of arrogance appeared in his heart. After understanding the relevant information in detail, Jiang Tian ordered Lin Fengmian to continue to search for relevant information. He planned to wait for Huang Linger to completely master the divine art of withering glory, which was after the Chinese New Year, before leaving for Africa. After all, it was already the end of the year. He spent the second half of the year in South Korea and Japan, and did not spend much time with his family. Jiang Tian had to take advantage of the Chinese New Year to make up for it. In the blink of an eye, it was Laba. This morning, Jiang Tian received a call from his mother. Just as Jiang Tian expected, the Zhang family called. They want us to go to Yanjin for the Chinese New Year. In fact, Zhang Wanqing was a little nervous. She knew that Jiang Tian was very clear about his love and hate, and he was very unhappy with the Zhang family. To her surprise, Jiang Tian agreed without hesitation. Alright, let's go and have a look. It sounded like the Zhang family did not tell Mom about the fight in the Zhang family. What are they up to? He wanted to see what kind of scheme the Zhang clan had in mind. Alright, we'll arrive at Yanjin Airport at 4 p.m. Pick us up at the airport and we'll go to your grandfather's house together. Zhang Wanqing heaved a sigh of relief. In the afternoon, Jiang Tian drove to Yanjin Airport, picked up his parents and left the airport. He saw Zhang Danfeng and Zhang Qinzhen chatting happily outside the airport. Zhang Yilin was there too. Sister. Brother-in-law. Zhang Qinzhen was back to his usual self, dressed in a suit and leather shoes. When he saw Zhang Wanqing, he walked up to her excitedly. Qinzhen. The last time I saw you was 5 years ago. Yilin has also grown taller. She's a big girl now. Zhang Wanqing held Zhang Qingen's hand and her eyes turned red. She reached out and patted Zhang Yilin's head. Jiang Tian watched from the side calmly. The Zhang family is really good at scheming. Sending Zhang Qinzhen to contact the Zhang family was the most appropriate. Only his fourth uncle Zhang Qinzhen had a closer relationship with the Jiang family. It seemed that they had reused Zhang Qinzhen. And uncle, it's too cold here. My family has prepared a banquet at Wangjiang restaurant to welcome you. Let's eat there and talk. Zhang Danfeng greeted them affectionately. He took out a pack of Chunghua cigarettes and offered them to Jiang Tian and Jiang Zhixing. Jiang Tian waved his hand to refuse. Jiang Zhixing accepted it. Zhang Danfeng even lit Jiang Zhixing's cigarette, showing great respect. Then let's get in the car. Zhang Wanqing happily agreed. She and Jiang Zhixing looked at each other and they were a little happy. It turned out that Zhang Danfeng did not treat them like this. He was arrogant. It seemed that the Zhang family's attitude toward them had changed greatly this time. On the way, Jiang Tian asked Zhang Yilin, Yilin, did you tell them about me destroying the Bai family? No. Zhang Yilin said angrily. You're smart. It's not because I'm smart. Zhang Yilin shrugged helplessly. Your fourth uncle found out about my Bugatti Veyron and asked me where I got it. I said that Qin Zifen gave it to me. Now the 6 great families in Beijing are stunned by you. They said that I'm crazy and that you're lying. Your fourth uncle doesn't believe me. Do you think your eldest uncle will believe me? Jiang Tian facepalmed. So, am I that bad in everyone's eyes? It's too hurtful. Wangjiang restaurant was located at 89 Chang'an Avenue. Next to it was the Chang'an Club owned by the richest man in Hong Kong, Superman Lee. Although Wangjiang restaurant was not a top clubhouse, it was still one of the top restaurants in Beijing. It was as famous as Kunlun and the Wang Mansion. Wangjiang restaurant was a combination of Chinese and Western architecture. Although it was a high-rise building with more than 10 floors, the roof was covered with antique gray tiles and double eaves. In fact, many buildings in Beijing were built in this style in the last century, including the old train station. They got out of the car and threw the car keys to the valet. Then they walked into the grand hall. Inside the hall, a red carpet was laid on the floor. Palace lanterns hung high in the sky. 2 rows of beautiful and tall girls in cheongsam stood on both sides of the hall. When they saw the guest enter, they bowed in unison and shouted in unison, "Welcome, young Master Zhang. Welcome." These girls were all part-time students from the Chinese Academy of Dramatic Arts, Beijing Film Academy, Beijing Music Academy, Beijing University of Foreign Studies and other universities. Any one of them would be a goddess. Seeing this, Zhang Danfeng curled his lips and sneered. Li Tianxuan came from a humble background. He's good at business, but his taste is a bit bad. While they were talking, a skinny middle-aged man in luxurious clothes, wearing a tang suit with an emperor glass-type ring on his hand, trotted over as if he was flying. He cupped his fists and bowed deeply. "Oh, young Master Zhang, I didn't expect you to come. Why didn't you inform little Li?" Next to him, a dozen or so hostesses in palace attire had fear in their eyes as they bowed to Boss Li. Boss Li. Li Tianxuan, the boss of Wangjiang restaurant. He was the richest man in the food and beverage industry in Wuxia. Jiang Tian remembered that this person often appeared in the top 100 of the Forbes rich list. He even married a Taiwanese female celebrity, and gossip about him often appeared in the media. However, at this moment he was extremely respectful towards Zhang Danfeng, as if he was a subordinate meeting a great leader. "Are there any more rooms? I want a heavenly box." Zhang Danfeng nodded reservedly and didn't even look at him. "You're here. Even if there isn't one, I'll make one for you," Li Tianxuan said flatteringly. Then he looked at Jiang Tian and asked, "These are?" "My aunt, Ms. Zhang Wanqing, is the CEO of the Medicine King Group. My uncle Zhang Zhixing works in Lingnan province. My cousin Jiang Tian is the crown prince of the Medicine King group. Zhang Danfeng introduced them one by one. Oh, so it's Boss Jiang, Lord Jiang. I've heard a lot about you. Li Tianxuan suddenly had a whole new level of respect for Jiang Tian and the others. He shook hands warmly and handed over their business cards with both hands. Then he gave a thumbs up and praised sincerely. This is the Medicine King Group's victory in the Battle of TKM. You've made Wuxia proud. You're welcome. Zhang Wanqing smiled gently. Please follow me. Li Tianxuan hurriedly led the way. Lord Zhang, Boss Zhang, Mr. Zhang, if you need anything just tell them. You can just call me. Li Tianxuan led the group to a luxurious private room, then scolded a few waitresses in Cheongsam sternly, "You're too arrogant. These are the distinguished guests of Lord Zhang and the Jiang family of Jinling. They are our most distinguished guests. If you don't serve them well, you can all pack up and get out." Boss Li. The waiters were so scared that their faces turned pale. They quickly bowed and agreed. Boss Li, it's just a family banquet. You're making everyone nervous. Do you think I'll dare to come again next time? Zhang Danfeng pulled Jiang Zhixing and his wife to sit down while he sat down at the door. He then raised his eyebrows and said unhappily. You're right, Boss Zhang. I'll definitely change. I'll take my leave first. Li Tianxuan nodded his head and left. Zhang Danfeng invited Zhang Wanqing to order. Zhang Wanqing waved her hand and said with a smile, Danfeng, you're very familiar with this place. You can do it. All right, then I'll boldly represent you. I remember that my aunt likes pumpkin pie the most. Zhang Danfeng smiled as he ordered, My dad and the others are already on their way. My parents don't like to eat out, so they want us to meet them after dinner. You still remember? How thoughtful of you. Zhang Wanqing was slightly moved. They were a family after all. Family ties couldn't be cut off. Jiang Tian sneered in his heart. What was the Zhang family trying to do? They had put a lot of effort into this family banquet. Chapter 522. After ordering, Zhang Danfeng began to chat with Jiang Zhixing and his wife. He mainly talked about the Medicine King Group and the operation of his software pioneer park. He was quite insightful and hit the nail on the head every time. He also personally poured water for Jiang Tian's family. The atmosphere was quite harmonious. After a while, Zhang Zhonghua and his wife arrived with Zhang Qingji and Zhang Qinggong's families. The spacious private room was suddenly filled to the brim. Jiang Tian Yilan, I'm sorry about last time. It's my fault. Zhang Huchen took the initiative to apologize to Jiang Tian, but his voice was so low that Zhang Wanqing and her husband couldn't hear it. Jiang Tian nodded slightly. Everyone chatted for a while and sat down. Zhang Zhonghua naturally sat at the head of the table since Zhang Jinghua and his wife were not there. Wanqing, it turns out that we're far away from each other and our relationship is a bit distant. We should hang out more in the future. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 dishes, Zhang Zhonghua raised his wine glass with a smile and said with the demeanor of an elder, Blood ties can't be cut off. Yes, brother. It's all my fault for being too stubborn. Zhang Wanqing's eyes were slightly red. What was there not to be able to get over it? After all, they were close relatives. Yes, we have to be united and twist into a rope. With the Zhang family's protection in the future, who can bully you in Wuxia? Zhang Qinggong smiled proudly. Zhang Wanqing felt a little uncomfortable when she heard that. Not to mention that the Jiang family was now the #1 pharmaceutical company in Wuxia, and their assets were no less than the Zhang family's. Just with Jiang Tian, this monstrous talent, overseeing the Jiang family was not something the Zhang family could compare to. However, the other party had good intentions after all, so they couldn't say anything. Uncle is now the 3rd most powerful person in Yanjing. He's more than qualified to be a governor. Zhang Yue flattered with a smile. Uncle is still young now. He's only 50. He's a young cadre. In the future he might be able to reach the central government and surpass the old man. If Uncle reaches the central government, it'll be different. Our Zhang family will be a top family. Zhang Huchen could also say a few polite words. Then from now on, I won't make a fool of myself by making an entertainment city. I'll make a big project. That's earning money like water. Brother-in-law, smoke mine. All the leaders in the sea like to smoke this. Zhang Zhonghua gave Jiang Zhixing a specially supplied red panda cigarette and lit one for himself. He took a puff and smiled reservedly. Zhixing, have you ever thought of coming to Beijing to develop your career? I'm friends with the CEOs of Huaguang Group, Huaning Group, and Huarong Group under the State-Owned Assets Supervision and Administration Commission of Beijing. If you want to go in, I can help you talk to them. The investment group in Su Province is also not bad. However, the scale of their assets was still a little small, and their platform could not be compared to the state-owned enterprises and the state-owned enterprises in Beijing. You're only a deputy director now. You need to work fast. Otherwise you'll be old. That's right. Yue is now the director of the Strategic Investment Department of Huaguang Group. Uncle, if you don't work harder, you'll be overtaken by the younger generation. Zhang Huchen interrupted. Without Uncle, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today. Uncle, let me toast you. Zhang Yue stood up and raised her wine glass respectfully with a smile. Sit down, sit down. This is a family banquet. I'm not your leader. Zhang Zhonghua took a sip. He was quite at ease and had the authority of an official. However, Jiang Zhixing said neither humbly nor arrogantly, Brother, I'm doing well in Jinling. I have no intention of moving for the time being. The province has just issued the appointment document. After the Spring Festival, I'll be the new Jinling Municipal Committee number 1. When he said that, everyone was shocked and embarrassed. They were shocked because Jiang Zhixing's promotion was too fast. 2 years ago he was only the county magistrate of Qixia County. Now he was the Jinling number 1. This was like a rocket rising at the speed of light. However, if you looked carefully at his resume, there was no problem at all. From the director to the deputy director to the director, there was no problem at all. Although Jinling couldn't be compared to Beijing, it was still a provincial capital. After all, he was the head of a province. His authority was almost the same as Zhang Zhonggua's. However, Zhang Zhonggua's lecturing tone and attitude just now, and everyone was still showing off. It was a little ridiculous. Zhang Zhonghua was quite shrewd after all. He smiled and raised his wine glass. Ting, you're good. I have to congratulate you and Wan Qing. Looking at the stiff smiles of Zhang Zhonghua and the others, as well as the unconcealable shock in their eyes, Jiang Zhixing downed his wine glass. Jiang Zhixing picked up the wine cup and drained it in one gulp. His heart was filled with joy. In the past, every time he went to the Zhang family's door, Zhang Zhonghua had a look of disdain and pointed at him from above as if he was a junior. When did he have the slightest bit of respect? But now. Zhang Danfeng smiled and said, However, I heard that the Jiang family's shares in the Medicine King Group have been packed into the Medicine King Holdings registered in Beijing? And are you planning to develop in Beijing? Listed companies had to announce important matters. This news couldn't be hidden from Zhang Danfeng and the others. Zhang Wanqing smiled and said, It's like this. Our next step is to become an international company. It's most suitable to be in Beijing. She couldn't help but look at Jiang Tian proudly and said, This is also Jiang Tian's opinion. From the looks of it, Zhang Wanqing actually values Jiang Tian's opinion? Zhang Danfeng, Zhang Yue and the others looked at each other a little confused. They accepted that Jiang Tian practiced martial arts. After all, the Jiang family was rich. It wasn't impossible for them to find an expert to become a disciple of a famous teacher. However, when it came to business management, there was a lot of knowledge involved. How could Jiang Tian know? However, Zhang Zhonghua found an entry point. Wanqing, Beijing is a place where good and bad people mix together. The water is very deep. If you want to do well in Beijing, it won't be easy. Otherwise, it might even lead to a fatal disaster. Is it that exaggerated? Zhang Wanqing smiled. Ever since Jiang Tian rose to power, the Jiang family had been through all kinds of storms. Do you know Su Tianyun? Zhang Zhonghua asked mysteriously. Of course. The richest man in Wuxia. He started his business in real estate. Zhang Wanqing was stunned. It seemed that Zhang Zhonghua didn't know that the Su family offended the Jiang family and was wiped out by the Qin family. Yes, the Su family is much more powerful than your Jiang family. Su Tianyun is the richest man in China, and the Yi-Rong Group is worth 200 billion. It's equivalent to 2 Jiang families. But now, guess what happened to them? Zhang Zhonghua slapped his thigh. With a loud bang, everyone jumped in fright as if they had been hit by a wooden plank. What's wrong? I heard that he was going to hold his wedding at the Dynasty Club in Beijing. There's no news now. I heard some bad rumors. Zhang Danfeng, Zhang Huchen, Zhang Yue and the others were shocked and asked curiously. The Qin family destroyed them. Zhang Zhonghua said with lingering fear. It seems that they offended the recently famous Kong Teichu. The Qin family stripped them of their assets and expelled them overseas. Su Shiji was beaten into a vegetative state by Qin Zongheng in public. The Qin family is too cruel. The Su family, the richest family in China. Everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time, feeling that it was unbelievable. The Su family is just the Qin family's white glove. Su Shiji's grandfather is a guard of Qin Zhong. How can he survive after offending Master Kong? Zhang Danfeng was knowledgeable and took it for granted. The topic quickly turned to the hottest topic recently, Kong Teichu. Everyone was whispering and discussing. I heard that the 6 major martial arts families are now Kong Teichu's disciples. The 6 families are planning to hold a adjudicator ceremony to celebrate this Kong Teichu defeating the Bai family and dominating Yanjin. Countless tycoons, officials and celebrities want to be Master Kang's disciples. They are all preparing for this ceremony. Yeah, I heard that too. Said that you have to be one of the top 100 tycoons on the list. If you want to be Master Kang's disciple, you have to pay at least 1 billion Wuxia dollars. So much money. Don't think it's expensive. You still have to be recommended by the 6 major families. The 6 major families are too high to reach. Do you think they will pay you any attention if you don't get 1 billion or so? Zhang Yue's eyes shone with adoration as she sighed with an intoxicated expression. I heard that this Kong Teichu is only in his 20s, but he is already dominating an entire country. Oh, if only I could get to know him. Forget it. You wanted to get to know Qin Zongheng at the last gathering, but he threw your name card into the trash can in a blink of an eye. Zhang Huchen rolled his eyes at her and said with disdain. Unexpectedly, the arrogant Zhang Yue didn't refute and only sighed. Don't you know that this Kong Teichu is? Zhang Wanqing wanted to laugh and blurted it out. However, Jiang Zhixing stepped on her under the table. What are you doing? Zhang Wanqing turned around and asked angrily. Let's listen to them first. Jiang Zhixing had been in politics for many years, so he was more shrewd. The Zhang family wouldn't talk about family matters with you. These topics seemed to be fleeting, but they all had a purpose. You wanted to see what the Zhang family was up to. Wanqing, you are quite knowledgeable. You have heard of Kong Teichu. That makes things easier. Zhang Zhonghua looked at Zhang Wanqing and said, You should know that you and the Jiang family are nothing but weak ants in front of the peerless experts like Jiang Taichu and the 6 major families of Yanjin. Zhang Wanqing didn't say anything. She pursed her lips and smiled. What you said is interesting. What do you mean by knowledgeable? I have heard of Kong Teichu. He is my son, okay? Chapter 523. Don't treat this as child's play. If you want to do business in Yanjing, you have to be on good terms with these superpowers. Zhang Zhongguo's expression was stern, then he smiled proudly. If that's what you want, I can introduce you to them. To tell you the truth, Dan Feng is on good terms with the new head of the Fu family, Fu Jiuge, and a few other top young masters. Yes, that makes sense. Jiang Tian nodded in agreement. But big brother, how can we get on good terms with them? Jiang Zhixing and Jiang Tian looked at each other and smiled. It turned out that the game of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger was so fun. Then let these guys with excessive sense of superiority be proud for a while. You can offer 10 billion. Zhang Zhonghua sipped his tea and said calmly, I'll sell my old face and introduce you to them. As long as you become friends with these superpowers, you won't be far from Kong Teichu. In Wuxia you can basically do whatever you want. You can settle all the official and business relationships in one fell swoop. If you're not my family, I won't waste this effort. His tone was condescending. It was as if asking the Jiang family to pay 10 billion was a great favor from him, and the Jiang family should be grateful. When Zhang Wanqing heard this, she felt that her husband's approach was right. If she had just revealed her son's identity, they probably wouldn't have known that they were holding back their evil intentions. I'm afraid it'll be a little difficult for us to take out 10 billion. The cash flow is also quite tight. Forget it. Zhang Wanqing shook her head. Hearing this, everyone was slightly taken aback. Zhang Zhonghua smiled a little stiffly and said, Wanqing, you're silly. You don't know the stakes in this. If we offend these big shots, we've always been operating legally. We don't offend anyone and our orders are very stable. Let's not think about this for now. Zhang Wanqing declined tactfully. Zhang Zhonghua stared at Zhang Wanqing with a slightly cold expression. He leaned back in his chair and lit a cigarette. He finally revealed his true intentions and sneered, Wanqing, I'm afraid you'll have to pay 10 billion. What? Zhang Wanqing smiled. Some time ago, Jiang Tian beat up Pan Jiejun, the son of Deputy Director Pan of the FDA, outside the Fragrant Hills villas. Both of his legs were fractured. Zhang Zhonghua said coldly. Deputy Chief Pan said that he was going to teach Jiang Tian a lesson. He was furious. It was only when I went to apologize to him that the Pan family agreed to let you go. If that's your attitude, then I won't care anymore. What? Jiang Tian, you even hit Pan Jiejun? Don't you know that they are from the Fu family? Zhang Yuwei and Zhang Huchen looked at Jiang Tian as if he were crazy. In the past few days they had been learning about Kong Teichu and the 6 great families. They were well aware of how terrifying a martial arts family was. The Pan family and the Fu family were on good terms. Wouldn't that be troublesome? Jiang Tian, is that true? Zhang Qinzhen looked nervously at Jiang Tian and said, Jiang Tian, why don't you just give in and apologize? Jiang Tian nodded slightly. Zhang Qing'an's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Zhang Zhonghua and begged, Brother, you can't just ignore this. But can you please reduce the money? The Medicine King group has just started to develop. It's not easy. Zhang Yilin spoke up for Jiang Tian. It's not Cousin's fault. They were the ones who molested Cousin's friend first. Shut up, Yilin. Zhang Danfeng scolded her harshly. Then he looked coldly at Jiang Tian and said disdainfully, Jiang Tian, do you think you're so great just because you know some martial arts? The Fu family is a martial arts family. Do you think you can shake it? Jiang Tian, you're stupid. It wasn't easy for the Jiang family to cultivate a talent like you. You're destroying your own future. You're not just destroying yourself. You're destroying the Jiang family too. Jiang Tian, you don't know how deep the water in Yanjing is. Suddenly, a group of people began to criticize Jiang Tian. Of course, these criticisms were wrapped in the cloak of, I'm saying this for your own good. What's done is done. They're just a few ants. If there's any problem, I'll take care of it myself. Jiang Tian's expression didn't change at all. Good, you little bastard. You're really arrogant. Zhang Zhonghua was so angry that he laughed. He slammed the table and his slightly widened eyes were full of coldness and murderous intent. A month ago you beat up Huchen and Qingji. Now you're stirring up trouble in Yanjing. Isn't it enough that you've offended the Song family? You're pushing the Zhang family and the Jiang family into a fire pit. I wanted to help you mediate, but it seems that I've been thinking too much. I've been meddling in other people's business. Once he was angry, the atmosphere in the dining room immediately changed. Swords were drawn and the smell of gunpowder was full of hostility. Jiang Tian, you beat up your uncle and Huchen. What's going on? Zhang Wanqing asked in shock. Auntie, it's like this. Zhang Yilin told the story concisely. Zhang Wanqing's brows furrowed after hearing it. On the other hand, Jiang Tian slowly sipped his tea before raising his head to look at Zhang Zhonghua and faintly saying, Zhang Zhonghua, you've been meddling in other people's business. What's the 6 dominant families of Yanjing? If they're nothing. Are they worthy of our friendship? You actually called him by his name and even insulted him by calling him a dog. You have no respect for your elders. Zhang Danfeng and the others were stunned and couldn't believe it. Good. You've got guts. Zhang Wanqing, is this how you teach your son? Zhang Zhonghua was so angry that his body trembled and his face turned purple. He didn't dare to vent his anger on Jiang Tian, so he turned around and stared at Zhang Wanqing. Uneducated. Boorish. So what if you know martial arts? You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You're brainless. You won't be able to survive more than 3 days in Yanjing. You've been ignorant and incompetent since you were young. You've caused a lot of trouble and now it seems that you haven't improved at all. You're just a bunch of country bumpkins. You think you can do whatever you want in Jean City? You're like frogs at the bottom of a well. You're so rude. Why don't you apologize to your uncle? Other than the 4th uncle's family, The other uncles and aunts were so angry that their faces turned pale. "Shut up, all of you." Zhang Wanqing slammed the table and exuded the domineering aura of the medical queen. Everyone was silent. With tears in her eyes, she asked sternly, "Brother, this is the last time I call you brother. If you call Jiang Tian a bastard, what do you think Xixing and I are?" Good, Wanqing. You've grown up. How dare you slam the table in front of your brother?" Zhang Zhonghua's smile became colder and colder. He finally revealed his true colors and said lightly, "The head of the Fu family, Bureau Chief Pan Jiejun, and the others wanted to negotiate with you. Since you and your son are so capable, you should be able to handle this small matter. You can talk to them yourselves." Receiving the hint in his eyes, Zhang Danfeng immediately got up and walked out of the door to make a call. Meanwhile, in an even more luxurious private room in Wangjiang restaurant. The room was more than 300 square meters in size and was brightly lit. At a large round table, more than 10 middle-aged men with extraordinary bearings were drinking and chatting merrily with each other. A group of beautiful women with their hair tied up in buns and dressed in red palace attire shuttled back and forth like fish, serving wine and dishes. Each of these beauties in palace attire could be a model for a fashion magazine. In the eyes of ordinary people, their temperament and appearance were at the level of goddesses. But now they could only gently serve these important people food and wine, as if they were palace maids serving the emperor. If there were people from the upper class of Yanjin present, they would have recognized these people. Those in the business world were worth more than 10 billion yuan and those in the government were above the level of director. However, none of these so-called successful people cared about the beautiful woman serving the dishes. Their reverent gazes were all focused on the fat man who looked like a meatball. "Let me tell you something. The adjudicator Master Kong is like a god. I heard that he can fly in the sky." Fat Fu smiled smugly. Old Pan, the deputy director of the Food and Drug Administration, smiled and said, "Family Lord Fu, have you really met Master Kong? When will you introduce us to him?" "Pfft. How are you qualified to meet Master Kong? He doesn't like to talk to common people like us." Fatty Fu gave him a disdainful look and said with a complacent smile. In the past, Fat Fu had to be polite to Deputy Director Pan. After all, he was only a distant nephew of Fu Hongxue. However, things were different now. With the support of Qin Zifen and the others, he had stabilized his position as the patriarch of the Fu clan and gathered all the remaining forces. He was now on the same level as the patriarchs of the other 5 great clans. So what if Deputy Director Pan was a deputy director? He still had to listen to him. "Please forgive me, Family Lord Fu. I will drink a glass of wine as punishment." Deputy Bureau Chief Pan hurriedly picked up his glass and drained it in one gulp. Then he joked, "But since Patriarch Fu was able to get acquainted with Jiang Taichu, then under Patriarch Fu's leadership, we will definitely be able to achieve great things." Seeing Deputy Director Pan's servile attitude, Fat Fu was very happy. He smiled smugly and said, "Alas, Family Lord Fu used to be very successful. I was just following Family Lord Fu to make a living. However, Fu Hongxue's health was not good. He suddenly died of a heart attack, leaving behind a mess and many brothers. I had no choice but to take on this responsibility." Deputy Director Pan smiled and said, "I heard that tens of billions of assets of Family Lord Fu have fallen into the hands of Family Lord Fu. Now even the chairman of the group is you. It's really worth celebrating. Alas, I was just a small director of the Fu family financial group. My Uncle Fu ate the meat and I was satisfied with the soup. Who would have thought that Uncle Fu's health was not good and he suddenly died?" Several members of Family Lord Fu were not on good terms with Qin Zifen and Qin Zongheng, so they were all driven away. They could only entrust me to act as their agent for the time being. I am ashamed. Although he said that he was ashamed, his fat face was beaming with joy. There was no trace of politeness in his eyes. Seeing this, the rich people and high-ranking officials around him started to flatter him. Fatty Fu was so happy that his soul almost flew to the sky. At this time, Deputy Director Pan suddenly received a phone call, and his face suddenly darkened. "What's wrong?" Fu Jioga asked. "Don't mention it." Deputy Director Pan shook his head resentfully and said, "My son's leg was broken by a guy from another place. Zhang Zhonghua of the Zhang family was a relative of that guy, so he mediated and agreed on compensation. However, the other party refused to admit it at the last minute. This person is drinking in the heavenly private room downstairs." Zhang Zhonghua? Who does he think he is? It turns out that he is still trembling in fear when he sees family Lord Fu. After hearing this, Fu Jioge's fat face was full of contempt. Then a fierce light flashed in his eyes. He slammed the table, stood up and said angrily, "Is he not afraid of family Lord Fu now that I am the head of family Lord Fu? Let's go and see." Seeing that Yanjing's new aristocrat Fat Fu had made a move, everyone quickly got up and followed him out of the private room. Chapter 524. Not long after Zhang Danfeng left, he returned to the private room. At the same time, a sarcastic voice sounded, "Jiang Tian, aren't you very powerful? Now that my father and Lord Fu are here, let's see how long you can keep this up." A fat guy walked in, escorted by a few middle-aged men with extraordinary bearings. Pan Jejun, who was the last one standing, pointed at Jiang Tian and yelled anxiously, "Stop! Lord Fu! Chief Pan!" Shocked, Zhang Danfeng, Zhang Yue, Zhang Huchen, and the other youngsters hastily rose to their feet and bowed respectfully. Even Zhang Zhonghua didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly stood up and sighed, "Lord Fu, Deputy Chief Pan, I don't know what to do. I can't persuade these stubborn blockheads. You can talk to them yourselves." Zhang Huchen pointed at Jiang Tian with a wine bottle in his hand and said, "Jiang Tian, I know you can fight, but you're definitely not a match for the Fu clan. I advise you to calm down a little." They came so quickly. They must have come prepared. Peaceful means before resorting to force. Zhang Wanqing secretly sneered in her heart, feeling sad. At this moment, her last hope for the Zhang family had been shattered. It was obvious that the Zhang family hated the Jiang family. They didn't really want to help, they just wanted money. They were trying to scare and trick the Jiang family. Even if the Jiang family handed over the money, they wouldn't be able to make friends with the so-called big families. They wouldn't be able to get anything. They were closer to the big families and might even kill the Jiang family and take over the Jiang family's assets. "Kid, aren't you very arrogant? Why don't you try to hit me again? Now that my father and Lord Fu are here, are you scared?" Pan Jejun limped over to Jiang Tian arrogantly, showing off his prowess as he laughed complacently. "Scared? Scared to death." Jiang Tian smiled faintly and said, "I'm scared that your legs will be broken again. There's no wheelchair for you to sit in." Deputy Chief Pan's face was livid. He questioned in a cold voice, "Zhang Wanqing, your son is very powerful. But don't forget that you still have a few export approval cards with me. Do you not want to pass them? Fatty Fu, is this how you lead people? I think you are tired of being the head of the family." Jiang Tian ate his fruit slowly and said coldly without looking up, "What? You brat, how dare you call Lord Fu Fatty Fu?" Lord Fu was so angry that he was trembling all over. "Don't tell me you don't know that this is Fu Jiao, the new Yan." At this moment, Zhang Zhonghua was practically certain that he had Jiang Tian in his grasp, and he pointed at Jiang Tian as he roared furiously, displaying the righteous indignation that he ought to have. "Jiang Tian, no matter how capable you are still no match for Fatty Fu. So what if you have a cultivation level? I only need to say a few words to make Fatty Fu suppress you." Zhang Danfeng sneered in his heart. He held his teacup and sipped his tea leisurely, his eyes full of pride. "What did you say? How dare you insult Lord Fu like this? Do you want to die?" Pan Jejun's face changed color and was about to explode. "It's just as I expected. With Jiang Tian's character, he only needs to call these people over. He doesn't need to fan the flames at all to fight with Fatty Fu and the others." Seeing this, everyone shook their heads. Their faces were full of schadenfreude as they waited for the Fu clan leader to make a move. Unexpectedly, Fu Jiao, who had been standing there for a long time and trembling all over, jumped up and kicked Pan Jejun in the waist, sending him flying to the ground. "Lord Fu, why did you hit me? Didn't you come to settle this matter for me? Hurry up and deal with this brat." Pan Jejun fell to the ground with a dumbfounded look on his face. Fu Jiao had just been promoted and was originally a distant descendant of the Fu family. He couldn't enter the core of the family and was on the same level as Pan Jejun's father. He was in the entertainment industry and was easygoing, so Pan Jejun was very close to him. In fact, after Fatty Fu became the head of the family, he was very proud. He accepted all kinds of invitations, went to all kinds of occasions, and helped people settle things everywhere. He was known as the best family head in history. But Pan Jijun didn't expect Fatty Fu to hit him. For a moment he was very confused and couldn't understand. In fact, the moment he saw Jiang Tian, Fujia was stunned. Isn't this the adjudicator Kong Teichu? How does he know the Zhang family? When he saw Pan Jijun provoking Jiang Tian, he was almost scared out of his wits. Why is this Pan Jijun so blind? How dare he provoke me? Is he trying to get me killed? I'm the one who's forced to do something beyond my ability. I don't deserve to be the head of the family. I don't even have the strength to truss up a chicken. Qin Zifan pushed me to be the head of the family in order to weaken the Fu family. If I offend Master Kong, how can I be the head of the family? Fu, shut up. Fatty Fu was full of hatred. He hated the heavens, the earth, and the air. He wanted to kill someone, so he kicked Pan Jejun's calf fiercely. Crack. Pan Jejun's calf immediately broke. His wound had just healed not long ago, so how could he withstand a second blow? Ouch. Pan Jejun was in so much pain that tears came out. He screamed at the top of his lungs and hugged his leg as he rolled around. Get this dog out of here. The head of the Fu family waved his hand energetically. He was quite arrogant. Several attendants hurriedly carried Pan Jejun out. Head of the Fu family, did you make a mistake? Zhang Zhonghua stepped forward with a puzzled face and looked at Zhang Danfeng. Danfeng, didn't you explain the situation? Fatty Fu asked tentatively. Old Zhang, is this Jiang? Mr. Jiang, a relative of your family? Head of the Fu family, Jiang Tian, is actually our relative. When Zhang Danfeng heard this, he also thought that Fatty Fu had made a mistake. He cupped his hands and smiled apologetically. Alas, this person does have some kung fu, but he lacks family education since he was young. He acts rudely and ruthlessly and is stubborn. The Zhang family is hated by everyone. He even scolded you just now. You can just deal with him. You don't have to give the Zhang family any face. Although Fatty Fu didn't have the slightest cultivation, he was very experienced in fighting Shanghai. He could see too clearly. From what he heard, it seemed that the Zhang family didn't know Master Kang's strength, and Master Kong didn't seem to be very popular with them. He slapped Zhang Danfeng's face and blood spurted out of his nose. He sneered and said, "What are you talking about? Don't you know the rules? Head of the Fu family, what did I do wrong?" After being slapped in public, a cold light flashed in the depths of Zhang Danfeng's eyes, but he hid it very well and even smiled apologetically. Just when everyone was puzzled, a voice suddenly rang out. Fatty Fu ran to Jiang Tian like a loyal dog that had seen its master. He bowed deeply and his head almost touched the ground. He said in the most respectful tone he had ever used in his life, "Greetings, Master Kong." Master Kong? The whole place was dead silent. Everyone was dumbfounded and looked at the rising star of Yanjin in disbelief. Like a believer who had seen a god, he trembled uneasily and stood in front of Jiang Tian. "Jiang, Master Kong?" Zhang Danfeng felt as if a bolt of lightning had flowed through his body, and his scalp was numb. There must be something wrong. Pasong, Kong Teju in his 20s. It can't be him, can it? Suddenly, a thought flashed in Zhang Qingji's mind, and his eyes were suddenly filled with fear. Clang. Zhang Huchen's hand suddenly trembled, and the wine bottle fell on the table and smashed into pieces. How is this possible? How is this possible? He is just a good-for-nothing. How can he climb to a height that I can only look up to? Zhang Danfeng's eyes were slightly widened and he stared at Jiang Tian in horror, but in his heart he was screaming at the top of his lungs. "Little Fu, you are quite enthusiastic, aren't you? Do you want to be an arbiter?" Jiang Tian sipped his tea and said slowly with a smile. Thump. Thump. Fatty Fu was so scared that his heart almost exploded on the spot. He directly knelt on the ground and the fat on his body kept trembling. He said in a trembling voice, "Grandmaster Jiang, you are the true judge. This lowly one doesn't dare to do that. I didn't know you were here, so I accidentally bumped into you. Please don't." He knelt down. Seeing this, Zhang Zhonghua was basically certain of Jiang Tian's identity. His heart suddenly tightened and he felt a chill run down his spine. He is a martial artist. He once scared away by Ling Fei and made Zhan Long submit to him. This time he suppressed Fatty Fu. Is he Kong Teichu? Zhang Yue's heart skipped a beat and her face turned pale. Her delicate body couldn't help but tremble slightly. There was only one thought in her mind. The Zhang family is facing a disaster this time. Chapter 525. Zhang Huchen's heart was like a stormy sea that kept churning. His legs, which were used to running with weights for 10 kilometers, felt weak like noodles. He remembered how he had humiliated Jiang Tian before. The more he thought about it, the more scared he became. He almost peed his pants. Kang Teichu was the man who had destroyed the Bai family and suppressed the 6 dominant families. He is indeed the legendary adjudicator Kang Teichu. So this is your trump card. You really hid your trump card well. Zhang Danfeng's heart was filled with sorrow. He smiled bitterly. Jiang Tian, you win. I originally thought that in terms of family background, ability and tactics I would be able to control you. Who would have thought that after calculating everything, you would actually be such an expert? We have lost everything. The Zhang family has lost everything this time. Although the ants didn't know much about the inside story, they knew that Jiang Tian was someone they couldn't afford to offend. They all looked at each other in dismay, standing close to the wall, not daring to meet Jiang Tian's eyes. They kept quiet out of fear, not even daring to breathe loudly. Deputy Director Pan was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. He quickly said with a flattering face, Madam Zhang, Grandmaster Jiang, I'm really sorry. My son was negligent in disciplining him and offended Grandmaster Jiang. He deserved to die. I'll break his legs when I get back. I'll punish him severely. Zhang Wanqing didn't have time to talk to him. She waved her hand and said, Deputy Director Pan, don't interrupt. We have some family matters to attend to. All right, I'm not going to argue with you. You can leave now. Jiang Tian waved his hand at Fat Fu and the others as if he was shooing flies away. He didn't want to argue with such a small fry. Besides, it was hard to find someone as useless as him. He was the perfect person to take over the Fu family for him. Thank you, Master Kong, for sparing my life. I'll take my leave now. Fat Fu was so excited that tears came out of his eyes. He kowtowed and thanked Chin Fan repeatedly. Then he rolled out of the door like a meatball. There was dead silence in the room. Everyone looked at Jiang Tian in embarrassment, fear and disbelief, not knowing how to break the silence. Zhang Zhonghua had been in the bureaucracy for many years and his skin was thick. His face was full of joy as he raised his wine cup and said, Knowledge Executor Wanqing, I didn't expect you to raise such an outstanding son. He actually became the judge of Wuxia. Congratulations. This is not only the fortune of the Jiang clan, but also the fortune of the Zhang clan. With a face full of joy he said, Don't misunderstand. I was just joking with you guys, don't take it to heart. He instantly lowered his head and admitted defeat. Kangti, the adjudicator of martial arts. The weight was too heavy. If Jiang Tian wanted to argue with them, he could crush the entire Zhang clan with a single finger. If the Zhang family could bury the hatchet with Jiang Tian and obtain Jiang Tian's protection, it would be a meteoric rise and they would become one of the top families in Beijing. As for Face, how much was Face worth? As long as he could curry favor with Jiang Tian, he wouldn't hesitate to kneel to Jiang Tian. Joke? It's all a joke, right? Zhang Wanqing smiled faintly, but her eyes were cold. Zhang Qingji smiled awkwardly and said, What else can it be if it's not a joke? After all, we're a family, right? Half of Jiang Tian's blood belongs to the Zhang clan. Big brother just wanted to show you the strength of the Zhang clan. I didn't expect the flood to hit the Dragon King's temple. It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Wanqing, don't take it to heart. Big brother, your joke is too big. You have to drink as punishment. Zhang Qinggong also raised his wine cup and said, Jiang Tian has such extraordinary achievements. Our Zhang clan will hold a banquet for 3 days to announce it to the world. Let's see who dares to look down on the Zhang clan in the future. As he said that, he gave Zhang Qinzhen a crazy look. Zhang Qinzhen sighed helplessly and said, Wanqing, Jiang Tian, after all, blood is thicker than water. For a moment, many of the Zhang clan members present raised their wine cups and congratulated, flattered and said soft words. Fourth Uncle Yilin will be leaving first. Jiang Tian didn't even look at them. He got up and left with a flick of his sleeves. Thank you for your hospitality. We're tired. We'll take our leave first. Zhang Wanqing also got up. There wasn't a trace of reluctance or emotion on her graceful face. Wanqing, stay at home tonight. We haven't seen each other for so many years. Let's catch up. Zhang Zhonghua pitifully urged her to stay. Yes, yes. It's more convenient to stay at home. It's not like a hotel. It's cold and impersonal. Yes, yes, yes. I just bought a villa there. The decorations are pretty good. Wanting stay there. Everyone's face was full of joy as they enthusiastically urged her to stay. I'm not staying at a hotel. I'm staying at Yuhua Mountain Villa. The environment is okay. Zhang Wanqing's words made everyone speechless. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yuhua Villa. That was the place where the founding fathers lived. What villa could compare to it? It was simply embarrassing. You have to stay at home for a day. Old master and old madam have always missed you. They always talk about you and care about you. Zhang Wanqing's aunt was like a petitioner who was holding a judge. She held Zhang Wanqing's hand tightly and begged with a face full of pleading. We'll talk about it later. I'm quite busy. Zhang Wanqing only lightly shook her aunt's arm, causing her aunt's arm to go numb. She unconsciously let go of her hand. When they went out, Jiang Zhixing smiled and said, Big brother, I'll treat you to this meal. I've always wanted to treat you to a meal, but I never had the chance. Zhang Zhonghua followed behind like a eunuch serving an emperor. He was extremely nervous when he heard that. He quickly waved his hand and smiled apologetically. Zhixing, it's not easy for you to come to Yanjing. How can I let you spend money? He lowered his voice and said with a fawning expression, Help me say a few words to Wanqing. I'll treat you later. He sped up and walked to the side of the car. He helped Jiang Tian open the door and carefully covered the upper edge of the door frame with his hand. He laughed and said, Jiang Tian, get in the car. Drive slowly on the road. Don't hit anything. Jiang Tian looked straight ahead and didn't even look at Zhang Zhonghua. Don't flaunt my identity everywhere. Otherwise I won't be polite to you. I know. Big shots keep a low profile. Uncle is not a child. How can he not know? Zhang Zhonghua's face was full of flattery. He glared at Zhang Danfeng and the others. If anyone dares to say a word outside, I'll break your legs. The others agreed and helped Jiang Zhixing and his wife open the car door. Their attitude was like that of subordinates treating their leaders. In a large office on the 5th floor of Wangjiang restaurant facing the street. In front of the floor-to-ceiling window, Li Tianxuan, the chairman of Wangjiang Restaurant Culture Group, was shocked when he saw this scene. What the fuck? Is this a central leader? How can he suppress Zhang Zhonghua and Zhang Danfeng? Behind him was the female store manager who was wearing a professional suit. She was unusually tall and had exquisite makeup on. Her beautiful eyes were filled with seductiveness and she said in a flirtatious manner, Boss Li, there was a lot of commotion in the heavenly dining room tonight. Young Master Jijun was beaten up and carried out. Even Fatty Fu, the new rich in Yanjing, bowed to this young Master Jiang. He was so shocked that he knelt down. Li Tianxuan came from a humble background. The reason why he could turn Wangjiang Restaurant into the top restaurant in Yanjing in a short time was because of this group of insightful staff. With them he was one of the most well-informed people in Yanjing. He was the one who could achieve the most. Then he's really a top-notch figure. Li Tianxuan's face was full of shock. His eyes gradually became scorching hot. He then said with a serious face, If young Master Jiang comes here again, no to any of the Wangjiang restaurant branches, you must inform me immediately. I must make friends with this person. If it's done, you'll get a villa. Meanwhile, Zhang Zhonghua was dragging Zhang Qingzhen and Zhang Qingji back to the Zhang family's mansion to meet Zhang Jinghua. Due to the importance of this matter, he even called a few of his granduncles. What do you think? After all, we've already made friends with the Fu family. Wanqing should have agreed, right? Zhang Jinghua sat on an armchair holding a cup of hot tea. He yawned, took a sip and asked indifferently. In his opinion, if Patriarch Fu were to step in and use both kindness and coercion, wouldn't Zhang Wanqing obediently give in and hand over the 10 billion? Well, Zhang Zhonghua's face was complicated. He said with a deep voice, Dad, we've made a mistake. Jiang Tian's identity is not ordinary. Zhang Jinghua raised his eyebrows and said unhappily, I know he's not ordinary. He's a martial artist, but he can't withstand the power of the Fu family. What? Won't he give in? Then let the Fu family deal with him. Humph. Do you really think you're all grown up and won't submit to the Zhang family? Old Madame Su Shulan pressed her walking stick against the ground and said fiercely, Then let's teach the Jiang family a lesson. Didn't Jiang Tian beat up Pan Jiujun? Let the Pan family do it. Let's not stop them. No, Dad, Mom, I've made a mistake. Zhang Zhongguo was extremely anxious. Sweating profusely, he said, Jiang Tian, he is Jiang Taichu. Bang. Zhang Jinghua's face changed drastically. His hand trembled violently and the Song Dynasty porcelain teacup that he had bought at the Christie's autumn auction fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. However, he didn't even look at the antique teacup. Instead, he looked at Zhang Zhonghua and said, What did you say? Say it again. Who is Jiang Tian? Dad, we've made a mistake. Jiang Tian is Kong Taichu. Zhang Zhonghua shook his head and sighed. He looked as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. How is that possible? You must have made a mistake. Zhang Zhonghua couldn't believe it. He thought that he was hallucinating or that Zhang Zhonghua had lost his mind. He knew his grandson better than anyone else. How could he possibly be Jiang Taichu? How could he possibly be Jiang Taichu? Su Shulan also said in surprise, Yes, boss. Kong Taichu is a godlike figure. Jiang Tian is a bastard. Dad, Mom, how could I have made a mistake on such a big matter? Zhang Zhonghua was so anxious that he beat his chest and stamped his feet. He told them everything that had happened that night in detail. He made Lord Fu kneel. I'm afraid he is the real deal. Su Shulan felt chills all over her body. She couldn't help but shiver. She looked at Zhang Jinghua with fear in her eyes. He's Kong Taichu. He's Kong Taichu. Zhang Jinghua shouted. Dee stood up with a livid face and paced back and forth in the hall like a manic lion. Bastards, a bunch of bastards. He was a well-mannered man, but he couldn't help but curse. His eyes were filled with anger and he looked like a ferocious tiger. Chapter 526. Zhang Qinggong was shocked and hurried to persuade him. Dad, don't be angry. Don't be impulsive. You can't mess with Jiang Tian's family. I'm not angry. You're pissing me off. Zhang Jinghua swung his crutch and smashed it on Zhang Qinggong's head. Blood spurted out and Zhang Qinggong fell to the ground. Zhang Jinghua was so angry that he even wanted to kill someone. The crutch made of dense and hard old sandalwood broke immediately. Dad, aren't you afraid of killing me? There wasn't much fat on the head. Zhang Qinggong grimaced in pain and covered his head. Zhang Yue felt sorry for her father. She helped Zhang Qinggong up and said, Grandpa, why did you hit my dad? Son of a bitch, you think I should hit you or not? How did you do your intelligence work? You deserve to die. Zhang Jinghua picked up the remaining half of the walking stick and smashed it on Zhang Qinggong's face, causing his skin to split open and his flesh to split open. He hit him and said angrily, It's been a month since Jiang Tian made trouble in the Zhang family, right? What did you find out? You only found out about the cash flow of the Medicine King group. I told you to focus on Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian. What about you? How did you do it? Dad, the 6 families have been guarding Kong Taichu's information. How could I find out anything? I'm just a business consulting company. Zhang Qinggong was beaten until he looked like a monkey on a red-hot iron plate. He jumped around and tried to block the attacks in vain while he threw the wok madly. If you ask me, Qingji should be the one to find out. He has connections in the National Security Agency. You think I didn't find out? The National Security Agency doesn't have the authority to do that. Zhang Qingji said gloomily. I've told you that this matter needs to be treated carefully and investigated carefully like walking on thin ice. You promised me that the information would never be wrong. But now. Zhang Jinghua shouted at the top of his lungs. What do you think we should do now? Don't tell me you want me to lower my voice and apologize to that little bastard? Zhang Jinghua threw away his crutches. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. He clutched his chest in pain and sat down on the chair. It seemed that he was about to have a heart attack. Old man, don't be angry. Su Shulan hurriedly found some boiled water and fed the old man a few special pills. Then she helped him massage his chest. Jiang Tian, after all, half of the Zhang clan's blood flows in his veins. He won't be ruthless, will he? After a moment of silence, Zhang Yue consoled. How would you know how ruthless Jiang Tian is? Zhang Jinghua smiled bitterly and sighed. I received news that his uncle Jiang Shoren was stripped of his official position and retired early. Now that he has suffered a stroke, no one cares about him. His cousin Jiang Qingfeng is still in prison. This is his father's closest relative. Even he is so ruthless, let alone us who have not been in contact with his family for more than 10 years. Zhang Yue no longer spoke, her face deathly pale. He is Kang Teichu. After Zhang Jinghua took the medicine, the dizziness disappeared a little. However, his body and mind were completely dominated by fear and regret. That's a ruthless character who kills people like flies. He's a transcendent being who even dares to fight the Japanese army head-on. Do you think he will care about this little bit of kinship? Hearing this, Zhang Yue lowered her head helplessly. Danfeng, you are too aggressive and not cautious enough. Zhang Jinghua stared at Zhang Danfeng and said in a low voice. I know I was wrong. Zhang Danfeng was startled and then he was shrouded in despair. This was the first time in his life that his grandfather had given him such a negative evaluation. He knew that he might lose the chance to become the family lord forever. Everyone's face was pale and they looked despondent and hopeless. No one said a word. The entire hall was silent. The atmosphere was oppressive and the air was so thick that it felt like water was about to drip out. Seeing this, Zhang Qinzhen shook his head and lamented in his mind. I have told you that life is full of ups and downs. Don't bully a poor young man, but none of you listened. Well, unfortunately, there is no medicine for regret in this world. We have to come up with a plan on how to resolve the conflict with Jiang Tian and the Jiang family. Seeing that everyone was silent, Zhang Jinghua was even more disappointed. He seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. He said with a dejected face, before we discuss this, I have a suggestion. Everyone turned to look at him. Zhang Jinghua said weakly, I am old and I don't have the energy to control the Zhang family anymore. Now I announce that I will retire from the family. The position of family head will be assumed by fourth brother Qinzhen. Zhang Yilin will also be in charge of the Yanjin Software Pioneer Park. Let's vote. That. Zhang Qinzhen couldn't believe it and exclaimed. Everyone else also exclaimed. Zhang Zhonghua's face was full of shock. Zhang Danfeng's face turned pale. He had expected this, but he didn't expect the old man to be so decisive. I agree. Third great-uncle was the first to nod. He was Zhang Jinghua's third great-uncle. He was already 100 years old and had a lot of prestige in the Zhang family. I agree. I agree. A few of the great-uncles and the leaders of the branch families nodded in agreement. In the end, Zhang Qingji and Zhang Qinggong, who felt powerless, also agreed. So, from now on, Qinzhen will be the family lord. Zhang Jinghua gave up his seat without hesitation. Hearing this, Zhang Zhonghua slumped on the chair like a puddle of mud. Zhang Danfeng had no choice but to give up his seat. He was as dejected as a frosted eggplant. After losing his position as the chairman of the Yanjin Software Pioneer Park, he could only take a small amount of dividends from the family fund. He couldn't even afford a paint job, let alone a Lamborghini. Qinzhen Yilin, what are you waiting for? Under Zhang Jinghua's urging, Zhang Qinzhen was the first to stand up. He sat on the family lord's chair in a daze. He felt like he was dreaming. Can I do it? Sensing everyone's envious and expectant gazes, Zhang Yilin panicked. He couldn't believe it. I'm an archaeologist. I have nothing to do with the software industry. Moreover, the Yanjin Software Pioneer Park's assets were too huge. It occupied hundreds of acres of land in the South District, and there were dozens of high-tech startups in it. Its chairman was a big shot in the Yanjin business circle. With a stomp of his feet, the entire Yanjin and the software industry would be shaken. One word from him could mobilize billions of assets. He had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. Yilin, you can do it. Everyone will support you. Although Zhang Yue was envious and jealous, she knew that the situation was hopeless. She took the lead with a smile. Yeah. Everyone will support you. Everything can be learned. Isn't it easy to do business? Everyone expressed their support and encouragement. I'll listen to Grandpa's arrangement. The image of Jiang Tian's tall back suddenly appeared in Zhang Yilin's mind. She felt that even if Big Brother Sword and Saber were to come at her, he would still be able to stop them. So she stood up and sat on the seat that Zhang Danfeng gave her. Congratulations, Yilin. You should be the youngest chairman in Yanjin. Everyone congratulated her, but their hearts were filled with envy. Especially Zhang Danfeng, whose eyes were filled with uneasiness. Zhang Qinzhen was infertile. Zhang Yilin was adopted by them. She was already at the edge of the Zhang family. It could be said that Zhang Yilin was the least valued disciple of the Zhang family. A month ago she was even punished by the family and was almost beaten to death or frozen to death. However, she had risen to the top and became the leader of Yanjin. Zhang Danfeng, the prodigy of the Zhang family, had become an ordinary person. And all of this was brought about by Zhang Tian. This was what it meant when a man achieves the Tao. In fact, everyone knew that. Zhang Qinzhen was good at scientific research, but he was no match for Zhang Zhongguo when it came to relationships and business. He was even worse than Zhang Danfeng. The old man's arrangement was to curry favor with Jiang Tian and tie Jiang Tian to their battleship. However, Zhang Danfeng was someone who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. He made up his mind that he would climb up from where he fell. Even if he had to be Jiang Taichu's dog, he would still hug his thick thigh. Thank you, everyone. I will work hard. I will do my best. I won't let you down. Hearing everyone's congratulations, Zhang Yilin moved her buttocks and cupped her fists. She was in high spirits, but she gradually clenched her fists, and a trace of undetectable determination appeared in her eyes. Brother, you're too outstanding. You're like a star high up in the sky. If I don't make some achievements, how can I be worthy of being your sister? Zhang Jinghua, accompanied by third granduncle and the others, walked into the study and sat down while they discussed. Third granduncle smiled and said, Jinghua, you've made the right move. Although Jiang Tian has no feelings for the Zhang family and even hates them, his feelings for Qing'an's family are very deep. Qing'an's family is in control now. If the Zhang family has any difficulties in the future, Jiang Tian won't stand by and do nothing. Look at his unfathomable power and his wide circle of friends. The rise of the Zhang family is just around the corner. There's no other way. If I don't do this, I really wonder if the Zhang family can still survive. Zhang Jinghua smiled bitterly and said, I'm really old and blind. The real person is right in front of me, but I can't recognize him. I've underestimated this grandson of mine. Sai, I don't expect the Zhang family to prosper. It's fine as long as we don't fall. Zhang Jinghua has given me a difficult problem. You're really old and shrewd. You're as fierce as a tiger. The next day in the living room of Yuhua Villa, Jiang Tian took a sip of tea, looked at Zhang Qinzhen and his family who were on tenterhooks, and said with a meaningful smile. In fact, the Zhang family was surrounded by wolves and crouching tigers and hidden dragons. The fact that they could stand tall for several decades and even rise slightly in the rankings showed that Zhang Jinghua, Zhang Zhonghua, and Zhang Danfeng weren't fools. Although Zhang Qinzhen said that everything yesterday wasn't the old master's idea, it couldn't be hidden from Jiang Tian. Zhang Zhonggua's actions must have received the old master's approval. When he asked for money yesterday, why didn't Zhang Jinghua and his wife show up? That was because they had left some leeway. The reason why the Zhang family was at odds with Jiang Tian was that they were just a secular family. Their horizons were limited and they couldn't reach that level. There were some things that they could never investigate or come into contact with. After truly understanding Jiang Tian's strength, Zhang Jinghua could be said to have acted decisively and without the slightest hesitation. This operation was swift and fierce enough. This attitude was also clear enough. Chapter 527. Jiang Tian, I'm not going to be the head of the family if you're making things difficult for me. I'll regret it as soon as I make the promise. Ouch. Xianxia Yan gave Zhang Qinzhen a pinch as he spoke. Xianxia Yan smiled. Jiang Tian, a single silk thread cannot be made into a thread and a single tree cannot make a forest. It's not that we're greedy for power and wealth, but it's good for you to have your fourth uncle in control of the family. Jiang Tian smiled but did not say anything. It would be strange if you don't like money and power. You were still wearing Uniqlo a month ago. Why are you wearing a mink coat now? Xianxia Yan smiled. Zhang Zhongguo was supposed to be promoted, but now that all the resources have been allocated to your fourth uncle, Zhang Zhongguo will not be promoted. Your fourth uncle will be promoted to the chief engineer of the military enterprise after the Chinese New Year. Won't that be good for your research and development of weapons? You'll be able to use a lot of resources. Not bad, fourth uncle. You'll be the chief engineer. The military corporation. Jiang Tian was not surprised by the exchange of benefits between the political and business families. He smiled and congratulated Zhang Qinzhen. Jiang Tian understood. Deep down, Zhang Qing'an's fourth uncle's family wanted to be in power. They had been suppressed for too long, and now that they had power in their hands, it was understandable that they would not be able to do as they wished. Zhang Qinzhen quickly said, "All right, I agree with all of that. Fourth Uncle Yilin, do your best." Zhang Qinzhen smiled. "Your grandparents still hope that you'll be able to come to the Zhang family and celebrate the spring festival together." "I don't think so. It's not that I'm prejudiced against the Zhang family, but I'm afraid of crowds." Jiang Tian shook his head and looked at Jiang Zhixing and Zhang Qinzhen. "But Dad, Mom, if you want to go, I won't stop you." Zhang Qinzhen could only nod. "Sister, brother-in-law, you have to go." Zhang Wanqing hesitated for a moment, but eventually nodded slowly. Zhang Yilin smiled. "Brother, I don't know anything about managing a business. You have to help me." "I can help you. Don't worry. In the future, the internet queen of Wuxia will be you." Jiang Tian smiled. In his previous life in 2012, he was taken away from Earth by his master, the old fart, and embarked on the road of cultivation. But that didn't mean that he didn't know anything about the future of Wuxia. Hundreds of years later, when he reached the divine transformation realm, he crossed the void and came to Earth. He took Qingris remains and spent several years peacefully on Earth. During that period of time, he had read a lot of business and technological works and looked through a lot of documents. Therefore, he was very familiar with the development of the internet software industry in the next few decades. "That's great." Zhang Yilin cheered. Jiang Tian looked at Zhang Qinzhen and said, "I know what Zhang Jinghua is thinking. Tell him that without you the Zhang clan has nothing to do with me. In the Zhang clan I only acknowledge you." Zhang Qinzhen nodded repeatedly. He knew that with Jiang Tian's words, it could be said that no one could shake his position. In the next few days, Jiang Zhixing and his wife went to the Zhang clan and were warmly welcomed by the Zhang clan. Zhang Zhonghua and other key members, as well as the heads of the various branches, accompanied the couple to inspect the various properties under the Zhang clan. They toured the Forbidden City, the Great Wall of Badaling, and other places respectfully as if they were important guests. For more than 20 years, Jiang Zhixing and his wife were not recognized and valued by the Zhang clan. They were depressed and felt as if there was a thorn in their heart. Now that they had returned to the Zhang clan, their status was high. It could be said that they were elated and happy. As for Jiang Tian, out of sight, out of mind. He didn't bother to see the Zhang clan and didn't appear in the Zhang clan from beginning to end. On this day, Jiang Tian had just woken up and was sitting on the dragon marrow spirit vein to cultivate when Zhang Qinzhen and his family came with Zhang Danfeng. "Jiang Tian, I know you're busy. I shouldn't have troubled you, but there's something I'm afraid you have to do." "What is it?" Jiang Tian was surprised. The Zhang clan was quite a reputable family in Yanjin. There was nothing they couldn't solve. Yilin was engaged to Han Junkai, the young master of the Han family in Yanjin. But this kid is a rich playboy. He likes to eat, drink, and gamble. Zhang Yilin didn't agree, but he forced her. Zhang Qinzhen said. Beside him, Zhang Yilin lowered her head and wept silently. "You clearly know that he is a hedonistic son of rich parents, a useless person. Why did you agree to it back then?" Jiang Tian frowned. "Our family had lost power in the Zhang clan. The old man had sacrificed Zhang Yilin in exchange for some political and business resources." Zhang Qinzhen lamented. "After all, the Han family is one of the top 5 families in Yanjin, second only to the Song family, the Lu family, and the Xia family. At that time, the young master of the Han family didn't even like Zhang Yilin. Although he wasn't very capable, his family had a strong foundation. But now that Yilin has taken control of the Yanjin Software Pioneer Park, the young master of the Han family is jealous and wants to get married before the Spring Festival." Hearing this, Jiang Tian nodded slightly. Zhang Yilin is now the chairman of the Yanjin Software Pioneer Park and owns a lot of shares. With just a word, she can mobilize billions or even tens of billions of assets. Even if the Han family doesn't take it by force, it's already impressive if they use it. Zhang Danfeng added, "Even though the Yanjin Software Pioneer Park is not a listed company, it has issued a lot of shares during its construction. The shares are very scattered. Now many of the shares of the minority shareholders have been bought out. After some investigation, we found out that the Han family is behind it." "So the other party has made a substantial move?" Jiang Tian frowned and said. "Yes. A few days ago Han Junkai invited Yilin out and harassed her. Luckily Zhang Huchen followed them all the way and nothing happened. Zhang Danfeng said. He has a death wish. Jiang Tian raised his eyebrows. A golden murderous intent flashed in his eyes. His face was as gloomy as water. At that time Huchen and Han Junkai had a conflict. Zhang Yilin also expressed that she wanted to reconsider the marriage. Han Junkai then threatened to make the Zhang family suffer. Zhang Danfeng said, in a moment of desperation, Yilin told him about your relationship with the Zhang family, but he didn't believe her at all. Then the Zhang family made a move in the financial circle. The Han family is powerful. We can't afford to offend them. They'll devour the Zhang family. Xianxia Yan was anxious and helpless. She said with a sobbing voice, Jiang Tian, you love Yilin the most. I won't hide it from you. Yilin agreed to this marriage because of you. Mom, don't say any more. Zhang Yilin quickly stopped her. But Jiang Tian already knew what was going on. Fourth uncle's family had lost power. Zhang Yilin wanted to help him and the Jiang family at such a young age. Thinking of this, Jiang Tian's heart was moved. He smiled and said, don't worry, I will take care of this matter. Thank you, brother. I've troubled you. Zhang Yilin's eyes were filled with joy. But canceling the marriage will still embarrass the other party. Jiang Tian, you have to be careful with your words. Zhang Qinzhen said worriedly. Don't worry, I've had my marriage annulled before. I know where the minefield is. I have experience in handling it. Jiang Tian laughed. The other party was pressing him hard. He could not afford to delay. Jiang Tian did as he said. That morning, Jiang Tian brought fourth uncle's family and Zhang Danfeng to visit the Han family. Along the way, Zhang Danfeng introduced the Han family. Although the Han family was not a martial arts family, their ancestors were at the level of a great leader. After decades of hard work, the Han family had great influence in the energy mining industry in Wuxia. Their influence was not only in Yanjin, but also in Behe province and Jin province. The current head of the Han family, Han Batian, was the second-generation descendant of the Han family. He was already 70 years old. He used to be a descendant of the military and was the spiritual leader of the older generation in Yanjin. He had a complicated background and a wide network. In terms of strength, the Han family was ranked in the top 5 in Yanjin. Even the Zhang family was a far cry from them. Han Juansai's generation was already the 4th generation. When Jiang Tian was still on the road, the Han family heard that the Zhang family had come to discuss the marriage. They were all summoned to the meeting room. Not only the Han family but many higher-ups also came. Moreover, those who were on good terms with the Han family or those who relied on the Han family were also invited and were distributed in the courtyard. In a tea room, the current head of the Han family, Han Batian, sat at the head of the table and smiled smugly. Ah, Zhang Jinghua is smart. The Han family has always been close to Lin Fingyan's family. After the battle at Xianglu Mountain, they have also realized the terrifying power of martial artists. Sitting down, Han Junfeng, who was dressed in a custom-made suit, looked at Han Junkai and said with a smile, don't worry. Zhang Yilin hasn't even graduated from university. How can she control Yanjin? Junkai, you have to be smart and help her a few times to gain her trust. Within 10 years, you have to think of a way to snatch the shares of the Yanjing Software Pioneer Park and take control of it. This will be a great contribution to you. Han Junfeng was the young talent of the 4th generation of the Han family. He was also the spiritual leader of the younger generation in Yanjin. His strength, prospects, and influence far surpassed Zhang Danfeng and the others. Only Lu Lishuan, the young master of the Lu family, the top family in the mortal world, could obviously suppress him. Han Junfeng was only 30 years old, but he was already at the helm of the Jinning Group under the Ministry of Energy. He was comparable to the old central enterprises such as the Huaning National Film Academy. According to the Administrative Division of State-Owned Enterprises, this young head of the Jinning Group was a true deputy minister. Even if the Administrative Division of State-Owned Enterprises was abolished one day, few people in the circle of rich people in Beijing would dare to underestimate Han Junfeng. Don't worry, brother. I just signed up for the EMBA CEO class at Qing University. There are a few professors who are experts in capital operation and equity management. Zhang Yilin is an idiot. Getting the shares of the Yanjin Software Pioneer Park is as easy as taking something out of her pocket. Beside him, Han Junkai crossed his legs and shook his Italian custom-made leather shoes that were studded with rhinestones as he smiled proudly. Han Juanzai's clothes were very luxurious, but his behavior was frivolous and his temperament was superficial. His body had been hollowed out by alcohol, women, and wealth. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.